Yeah. So, Nilesh Nilakantha Og ji is an author, original researcher, GAIA and TEDx speaker, UAAICT Distinguished Alumnus, and sought after keynote speaker. He holds BS and MS in Chemical Engineering and Executive MBA. He has published three revolutionary books. The first one being When Did the Mahabharata War Happen? The second was The Historic Rama, and the third Bhishma Nirvana. His books have been and are being translated into various other languages. He travels extensively around the world speaking to university and college students and to mainstream audiences. His work has inspired novels, novelettes, documentaries, and movies. Nilesh Ji helps individuals become aware of the deep wisdom and antiquity of Indian civilization so that they truly comprehend, present, or defend the grand narrative of this civilization, unlike most other Indic researchers, because he builds it through scientific acumen and logical reasoning. He is a researcher and adjunct faculty at the Institute of Advanced Sciences, Dartmouth, USA. So I welcome Nilesh Ji to the call, to this session, and the stage is all yours.
Namaskar, Mrunalini ji, and namaskar to everyone. Greetings, welcome. So here is the kind of a plan. I mean, I'm coming on this Adhyatma Vari for the first time, but I have possibly talked to some of you in some other forums. Number of you, Mrunalini ji, you can hear me fine, right? Okay. Number of
Yes.
yeah. Number of you would have hopefully listen to some of my talks, podcasts, possibly a documentaries like Dating the Mahabharata, or there are few other documentaries where you won't necessarily see me, but I'm in the background. Like, for example, if you have seen The Eternal Civilization, that's a 26-minute long documentary. Or there is another one, Apo Vai Amrutam, like water is the elixir. That's also another documentary. And then there are a few others which I won't mention. But I am in the background, not necessarily either a voice or whatnot, but the work is embedded into some of those documentaries. All right. So today I will talk very little or almost none about my work, because either you are familiar. If you are not familiar, then of course, you can go to YouTube, in search function, just type Nilesh Oak, and you're going to find thousands and thousands of videos. If you are into reading, then there are about 5 books of mine, some of them in multiple languages. Um, Again, many times people ask, okay, what are the names of the books? I think that's a waste of time. You these days with internet and everything, all we do is, and the AI these days, just all we have to do is ask, type the name. Or when people sometimes ask, like, oh, where can I find it? And I say, well, that's also a waste of time. Again, we have internet and all. I also believe all the demand, well, my background is in sales of many years, almost 35 plus. And one rule I learned, not many people agree with it or even understand it, but all demand is inelastic, which is to say, if somebody wants it, the person finds a way to get it. And if the person doesn't want it, no matter how much effort you put, the person will find excuses and reasons why not to buy that, or why not to take it to that path. Now, this is true not just for sales, not in the sales world, but it is true in our actual living world. Because if you are in sales, then everything is a sales. If you are in physics, then everything looks like physics. If you are in chemistry, everything looks like chemistry. Today, we are going to talk about the spiritual insights from Ramayana and Mahabharata. But we will keep it kind of generic, and just talk about spiritual insights, but of course related to Ramayana and Mahabharata. But I want to keep mine brief. So what I will do is I'll go for about 30 minutes, or even less. Let's see. The idea is to leave you with time for question and answers, generally what's on your mind. It's perfectly okay to agree with what I said. It's perfectly okay to vehemently disagree and say, hey, this is what you said, and I disagree, and here is why, and here is my point of view. Okay, so I think that's how we learn. Vade vade jayate tattva bodho. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share a presentation. So I have timed myself, so I will not take more than 30 minutes. We'll just go through it. That kind of creates something for us to discuss. My only request is when we get into a question answer discussion, make sure you restrict your questions or any intelligent comments right to what we discussed today in the next 30 minutes, okay? Because otherwise this is an ocean. I mean, if we just want to boil the ocean, ask any question, then that's like boiling an ocean, and then we may not get a very cohesive useful thoughts out of it. So if you can stick to what I discuss in that context, that will be very nice. Okay, so with that, let me start sharing a presentation. All right, let me see if I got this one right. No, not this one. Okay. All right, so presentation is here. Stop sharing. Okay. Uh, Window, no, entire screen. Okay, so let me just open my presentation and then share as entire screen. For some reason, and I'm not. Oh yeah, here. Now I get it. Pardon my clumsiness. All right, I'm here. Okay, Mronalini, do you see the whole screen?
Yes,
Okay,
perfect.
excellent. Okay, so spiritual insights from Ramayana and Mahabharata. Now, of course, Ramayana and Mahabharata is because when we understand in the context, when we have something to hang on to, like a story, it helps. Okay, because then everyone is on the same page. So, for example, if I use the word, if I just say Duryodhan, then immediately, lo and behold, at least those of us who knows a little bit about Mahabharata, a decent amount about Mahabharata, immediately an image comes in front of us. If we use the word Krishna, immediately an image comes in front of us, almost with a little or more that we know about Krishna, and same thing with Ram. Okay, and that's the idea of it. In fact, that's why if your group also does Ram Raksha, and you remember that word Rama Rameti Rameti Rame Rame Manorame Sahasranama Tattulyam Rama Nama Varanane. So Sahasranams of Vishnu are equal to saying Ram once. Now I'm sure you would have heard different interpretations, and those are all useful. So if you have heard different interpretations, then one more doesn't hurt. Okay, and if you haven't heard any, then this is one, which is to say why like a whole Vishnu Sahasranam is equal to saying Ram once. Because Vishnu, then we have to start thinking exactly, okay, where is it and how and what about him and so on. And we know some stories about Vishnu too, like in terms of grasping that concept. When it comes to Ram, actually, we know a lot more. So immediately that visualization, and therefore our ability to get engrossed or ability to focus, and that's why the potency of that name Ram is more, because we can just grasp ourselves very fast. So because we are kind of doing this in a German context, let's see. Okay, I thought I will start with Autobahnen. So imagine this is your whole world, just like our world or cosmos or universe or whatnot. But if the Autobahn is your world, then there are certain rules that you want to follow, and there are certain ways by which you make use of this. And again, usually, when I talk to Gunesh and his team, usually it is the all the auto companies and the car manufacturing hub. That's what I talk. So I thought I'll use that as a metaphor, but everyone can also relate to it. So imagine this: you might have seen this kind of arrangement where people with some physical disability, you will see that they have the accelerator, but also the brake also right next to the steering wheel. Okay, so they all can be controlled. And now you can see the three things. So what are those three motions, if you want to think of them, or the three possibilities there. So one is, of course, you can steer and then keep the car in a certain way, like, where you want it. The other one is, of course, like, ability to accelerate, ability to brake. And then beyond this, of course, you should know what is your destination. Okay. So for example, you may think of it that autobahn is again good metaphor, but in general, as a car and a road, and you as a driver who enjoys driving, so you have a freedom to go where you want. Okay. But that freedom better be restricted by the some laws, and that's what I'm calling niti dharma. Okay. And why is that? Because if you want to truly enjoy your freedom of driving and going from destination A to B, there better be some rails, there better be some restrictions, a positive restriction, a fruitful restrictions, a useful restrictions. Otherwise, it may be a short-lived journey, or it may not be a journey at all, and it may not be an enjoyable journey. Okay, so there are some rules, and so that's the niti, we can put this. And then, of course, you have to do the action of actually driving. Okay, there is an action, and that's that achar sahishnata. Now, the reason I use this is because these are the foundations for the understanding spiritual insights. It's important to understand. Actually, sometimes, spiritual means, like, some people will say, "Oh my God, there is going to be something very complex, and I don't think I'm going to even understand it." Or other people will think, unless it's very esoteric, said in a language, it can be Sanskrit, it can be Latin, whatever, but some esoteric language, something that we don't understand, it cannot be spiritual. So these are our stereotypes. But actually, spiritual is what? Like, so Adhyatma, we might use the word, which is to just know yourself. And to know yourself is, of course, to know everything around it, or from which you are made up of, which is the whole cosmos. Okay. So now, if you start thinking of these three foundations, I call these three foundations of Sanatan, three foundations of Hinduism, whichever way you want to look at it. So the one is that Vichar Swatantra, the freedom of thought. Think of it like this. The second one we discussed is Niti Dharma, the Dhrudata in Niti Dharma. In fact, many people have joined, and I don't know everybody's name, but when people were joining, I was looking at the names, and I saw many Marathi names, and so then, of course, not few non-Marathi, but mostly Indian names. And I said, well, so many Marathi names, this can be done in Marathi too. Okay, of course, I know I'm going to stick to English. My point is, then there were few who were not Marathi. And I said, just humorously, I'm going to say this. See, so this is a good example of how minority controls the narrative, which language gets used. Okay, so the reason I use that, this Niti Dharma is like, morality. We may translate this as morality, which is perfectly fine, but there is a fine shade, in the translation of morality. So for example, Abrahamic religions, they may say, hey, this is how what we consider morality. A certain thing that may be totally abhorrible in another civilization, another culture, can be considered a perfectly acceptable thing in another place. That's not what we are talking here when I'm referring to niti. This is in the sense of absolute morals. Now, people may even argue about absolute morals, but we will say what we mean by absolute morals in the context of Sanatan, which is, you say, ahimsa, satyam, asteya. And because we're going to talk about Mahabharata and Ramayana, what I thought I'll pull just a list of these niti in some sense from Mahabharata, from Ramayana, and you'll also see the aspects of thought process like vichar swatantra, but also the action. So this is in the sense of absolute morality, ahimsa, satya. What I mean by that is, by nature, irrespective of a human being anywhere, or even animals, and you can see this behavior in animals too. In general, as a rule, and by nature, um, as a generalizations, people want to be non-violent. Even the so-called violent animals, like, we would be scared of, like, say, lion and tiger and cheetah and whatnot. But if they are not hungry, they're kind of satisfied, okay, and just want to in an enjoyable mood, very rarely they are violent. Okay, so that's kind of the basic nature, or a preferred preference that you can see. Satya, if you take ahimsa, satyam, asteya, if you take satya, what you see is the conviction in the truth. conviction in believing in the truth, conviction in looking for the truth, searching for the truth, conviction in speaking the truth. And what do I mean by that is, even a thief doesn't want anybody else to steal something from him. Okay, so he understands the stealing as a bad thing, if you think of it. So he doesn't want anybody to steal from him, although he may be stealing things. Okay, and the same thing with telling the truth. Even the person, I mean, all of us are involved in white lying, white lies, that. But when we do this, we are perfectly aware that it is not the truth, and in a way it is the wrong thing. But we are saying, that's why we call this, yeah, it's not going to hurt someone, and it's going to allow me to achieve something. So we are still aware of it. So at an intrinsic level, we accept it, we understand it, we see the value of it, although we may not always practice it. And that's what we mean by this niti dharma dhrudata. So in the context of, say, driving, I know Godboleji joined from Pune, and my niece is the niece who is in Germany, has also joined. Now she has guests, so they may not stay longer and they may leave. But the point is, think of this niti dharma as like a traffic rules. Okay, and I mentioned Pune because in Sadashivpet I have seen just a one-way traffic. As such, the road is not that big. And then somebody says, you don't mind sitting on the back of a scooty? I said no. And then somebody puts me on the back of a scooty and absolutely goes in the wrong direction because it's a one-way and someone goes in the wrong direction. My point is, occasionally that's okay if the person knows what she is doing. Now, I'm not saying okay in the sense of giving approval of it, but the fact is our emphasis should be on following for most of the time to the best of our abilities. The dosha, as an error or the mistakes will still happen. Okay, but that's what we mean by niti. And the third one is achar sahishnata. Like, yeah, we have a great thought and we have a perfect understanding of the rules and the niti, but we don't do it. Then we're not going to truly understand why they were there in the first place. Actually, when we get into the action, and that's when we start saying how challenging it is to actually have a freedom of thought, or actually execute a freedom of thought, speak about it, and also the same thing with following the rules. Okay, now what is the connection of this? The connection of this is just, I'm going to go fast through this, but think of it. Vichar swatantra, that is the freedom of thought, is directly connected with our buddhi, our prajna, our intellect. Okay, I'm going to use these words interchangeably a little bit. So don't get too nerdy and say, well, prajna is different than buddhi and intellect may not be a perfect translation and so on. Because the lecture is in English, I have to use the English words too. Okay. Now, niti, which is to say how to remain. So think of this as a traffic rule, and autobahn also, you have to still, there are still rules. There is a freedom of thought and you can go at any decent speed, but there are rules, no tailgating and so on and so forth, right? So there are certain rules, there are certain rails that you have to follow. Okay, you have to keep your eyes open and whatnot. Um, and that is like skipping a balance, not too fast, not too slow. Think of it this like this. Okay, so that is that samyak. Okay, and we'll get to that word. But the niti has to do with the mind, because the mind has a ability or has an intention to break the rules, if you think of it. Okay, buddhi tells you what is right. Think of it. And then achar seshnata, which is a work that we do with the sharir. Now, this is what we are. This is what under spiritual insight is. This is understanding adhyatma, this knowing about yourself. Like, you are a combination of a sharira, mana, buddhi. Okay, in a very simple model that you will find in Bhagavad Gita and therefore Mahabharata and all our Upanishad and so on. Now, these are, if you take a thought and then you act on it, then that allows you to try something. That's your empirical experiments, and it may go well, it may not go well, and you say, oh, okay, I shouldn't have thought that way, I shouldn't have done it what I thought, and so on. Okay, if you think about something and try to test it against the moral compass, okay, then that's a thought experiment. A thought has come to me, should I act on it? And you ask this question within the text of the ahimsa satyam astaya, that kind of will tell you, should I try this even in the first place? And then you may actually go and do it. That's why I'm calling it a thought experiment. Now, sometimes we just keep the thought experiment as a thought experiment and never actually execute, because maybe with the science and technology and our ability, it may not be possible. That's one possibility. The second possibility is niti will tell us, or our bodily limitations will tell us we shouldn't try it. That's what happens in science too. There are many great thought experiments, but by the time you execute, sometimes it takes like a few decades, decades before you can actually execute. And then I'm saying, between actually thinking of a niti and actually practicing the niti in a real life, you get the refinement, or you start understanding the limitations of a niti, not the limitations of niti, but limitations of ourselves in practicing this niti. For example, if somebody is holding a gun to my head, okay, and now ask me to tell the truth. Well, this is not a fantastical story. I mean, you know the story of Galileo, where Galileo was saying that Earth is rotating around itself, and Earth is rotating around the sun, and you know that, right? And the church was very much against it. And church said, "Well, hold on, you shouldn't be saying that. Earth does not move. That's what our scriptures say. That's what the church would tell him." And essentially it was like they holding a gun to his head. And finally, even he got frustrated, he got tired, and he relented and he said, "Okay, all right, if you say so, then earth doesn't move." And then you might have heard, just maybe a metaphorical story, but he whispered to himself, he says, "Doesn't matter what I say, it moves anyways," which is to say, when we are tested, how we act against it, and that also tells us the limitation, but that also tells us the refinement of it. And that's what the itihas is about. Okay, that achar sahishnutta and niti, that's what this refinement is about. Because when we get into the action, actual the work, actually doing something, the action, that's when we start saying it's okay. We say that we think it's okay in theory, but how about in practice? We say that in the workplace also, we say that in a real life, and so on. Okay, so that is that refinement. And if you put this together, these are the foundations of our sanatan. And essentially everything that comes out, all we are going to call spiritual insights, practical insights, pragmatic insights for living, for enjoying life, for rapture of living, doesn't matter. It just basically comes out of this, how nicely you balance this. Now, so the vichar swatantra, why do we need it? In fact, I don't want to, today is not a topic, so I don't want to go about it, but take this as a freedom, take this as a food for thought, not freedom. Yeah, freedom too. Food for thought, which is to say, think of these three foundations and meditate on this and see how each one of these, uh, also emphasized by the Abrahamic religions, one each, okay, in a negative way though. For example, vichar swatantra, as to say you have a freedom. If you take Judaism, just as an example, I'm going to give you one example. Judaism. So how do you become a Jew? And many of you may know it, but if not, go and check on the internet and these days AI and whatnot. And the answer would be, well, you become a Jew by being born to a Jewish mother. Okay. Now, what does that mean? Again, if you look at the Old Testament or the whole Jewish philosophy, what is the idea that binds Judaism together? It is the God's chosen race. Somebody else chose it for you. God chose the certain race. You don't have a freedom. The only way you become a Jew is by being born to a Jewish mother. Okay, just I give that as an example. Okay. All right. I'll not go into the Achar Sahishnutta and Niti Dharma. I have my many lectures on this. You may listen to this, or you can use this as a something for meditation. My point was, freedom of thought has direct connection with the buddhi, but also direct connection with the satya. If you want to find the truth of something, you meaning not as an individual, as a society, as a group, whatnot, if the freedom of thought is not there, the chance of we getting to the truth or closer to the truth is next to impossible. That's how important this foundation is. Now, what is the benefit of this niti as in absolute morality? That has to do with the sanyam. Okay, just like we follow certain rules, like again the autobahn. These are unwritten rules. The people are not communicating to each other. Two car drivers are not communicating to each other on the phone, but they're communicating with the body language of the car, and also with underlying set of these rules that you follow in the traffic. Okay, those are known to the both parties. It's the same thing with the niti. Okay, that's how India's social policing works, or social policing works in many societies. When that doesn't work, we have a very violent societies, or that's what it is. If you see the India's population and a ratio of a population to the police force, you will find it's actually number of police are very low, because it is the social, that social, I wouldn't call stigma, but that social pressure of a niti is what held people. And I don't mean just India, it's what held native societies for long. Because if somebody breaks that niti rule, then he or she has to face the society, face that people of the village every day. Now that barrier goes away when cities become big, the places become big. You're not going to see the same person again, and so on. And then people may not have a motivation to follow this. Anyways, so the niti has to do with the sanyam, balancing, and then achar sahishnutta, as in the body. We do this with the body, with the and we do the karma work with the body, and it has to do with the seva. Now that also has a connection with, if you think of our different marga for spiritual path, like a jnana marga or bhakti marga or karma marga. Okay, karma yoga, jnana yoga, bhakti yoga. You will see again these are connected with this. Okay, one more word, the vichar swatantrya. Eventually the idea is to build the prajna, which is to say, instead of saying my intellect doesn't feel it like this. No, that's not a good statement, because why call my intellect? Just use intelligence, just use prajna, just use buddhi. Don't say my buddhi. It says to an intellect it doesn't make sense, rather than to say to my intellect it doesn't make sense. Okay, so can we see it very objectively? And what the help that is through Shraddha, which is the Shraddha, the faith into the basic rules. And what is that? That we are truly in the search of the truth. We are truly in the search of finding a non-violent way to live our life, Jio or Jinedo, that kind of thing we are talking. And the same thing with the tapasya, because as much as we may feel, oh, I don't want to do it, and let somebody else do the work. Actually, when we do the work, think of it, when you do the work with the right feeling, actually you feel good about it. When before exercise it doesn't feel very good to do exercise, but once you do it, you thank yourself and say, oh, I'm glad I did it today, it feels so good. Okay, and some of the things that stop you, of course, is the laziness coming from some different factors. But anyways, that's just the kind of a model. I want to quickly jump to Mahabharata. Okay. Now, this is the beauty. Number of you are doing Gita Parayan with the Gita Parivar, so I wouldn't spend too much time on this, but I picked something from the 13th chapter and picked something from the 16th chapter. Now, in 13th chapter, this comes as a definition of what is jnana, what is knowledge, is as a crude translation. Okay, and this amanitvam, adambitvam, ahimsa, kshantirarjavam, acharyo, pasanam, shaucham, stairyam, graha, so that's how it goes through the whole list. And now just say jump to another chapter, like in 16th chapter, and then the first three shlok there is basically a definition of a daivi pravrutti, okay, or daivi guna. So abhayam sattva samshuddhir jnana yoga vyavasthiti danam damascha yatnyascha swadhyaya stapa arjavam, and it goes on. Now, just to show, I could have taken the Lakshana of a Bhakta from the 12th chapter. I could have taken the characteristics of Sthita Prajna from the second chapter, and on and on. And the yogi, how the yogi behaves, or the summary of Bhagavad Gita from the 18th chapter. It doesn't matter. Okay, or all the Sattvic Guna, from the 17th chapter, for Daya, for Dana, for the food, the Ahara, and whatnot, they would all match. It just gets repeated. For example, you see the amanitvam and then amanita, the last word there in the second category here, second line, amanita. They're exactly the similar words, okay? And you will see the word ahimsa gets repeated. You see the word abhayam, fearlessness, gets repeated. Satyam gets repeated, and so on, okay? So that's, I'm not going to go through that. So this is a list that basically given to you. The Mahabharata or Bhagavad Gita is never tired of it. And so now what happens is, if you give this as a list, we understand it, but we say, okay, how do I do it? I mean, okay, so what exactly the amanitva means? Or let's take 16th chapter, abhayam, and then amanita means namratva, which is humbleness, and abhayam means fearlessness. Now, some people actually even struggle. They say, okay, oh, so you ask me, you want me to be fearless, but also at the same time very humble. And how's that possible? Now, you may laugh at this, guys, but I get this question asked multiple times. And I said, they're not contradictory to each other. In fact, you need one to have the other. Now, this takes some time. This takes some meditation time to, go through this. But if you see this, the number 16 is a good one. Think of this as a sandwich. If you take all the points in between, like there are 26 characteristics of a Daivi pravrutti or Daivi guna that is given. But if you see Abhayam, think of as a sandwich. Abhayam is the top slice, okay? And Amanita at the bottom, that is the Namratvam is the bottom slice, or whichever way you like, guys. But everything else that goes in between, okay, what do you see? Basically, you will see this as emphasis on truthfulness and then non-violence. Even the word dana, damascha, this is related to that ahimsa. Even the word ahimsa comes, okay, and basically the these words come, but basically it is all about kindness, being kind, okay, and being non-violent, okay, and looking for the truth. And you see that as a sandwich. Now the question is, you can have this list and you say, okay, but what does it mean to actually execute this or imbibe it in our life? And you will see this, that Eka Bhaktir Visheshate, every person cannot do all the things in the world, cannot fix everything in the world, but you can focus on one thing. At least that is actually the path given to us. Like when we says Eka Bhaktir Visheshate, or you will even here see um, Mai Chananya Yogena Bhaktir Avyabhicharini. Like focus on one certain way. Maybe the Karma Yoga, maybe the Jnana Yoga, maybe the Bhakti Yoga. Or if you want to take focus your life on something, focus on a certain mission, that what you are passionate about, and so on. And just to give these illustrations to us, now we have a avatar. In fact, the definition of avatar, now we'll talk of Rama and Krishna because that's the kind of a subject. What we find is, what is the difference between avatar and us? Well, there is a lot if you think of it. In another sense, there is not much. And what I mean by this is, like, avatar is described as 6 types of characteristics, and Bhagavad Puran will say, and many other Puranas will say, that avatar is someone in whom these 6 characteristics are there in huge quantity, infinite proportion or something. That is not to say we don't have those 6. Each one of us actually possess them. And so a simple definition I use is like, we have those. Whoever has more than these 6 characteristics, and I'll not mention those for a deliberate reason. Whoever feels interested, just go and see the 6 characteristics of a Bhagwan, and you're going to get those after this. We have those. You'll realize each one of us have them. If we find somebody who has a distinctly higher quantity than ourselves, we can consider that person as our guru, as a saint, as a person, someone that we may respect and try to learn from him or her. And if we come across a personality who has in a huge proportion, a significantly higher proportion, that person is considered an avatar. The avatar also has many kinds. I'll not go into that, like a Purna avatar and a Shesha avatar and Ausha avatar and Shakta avatar and so on. This is more philosophical matter. But let's look at Bhagwan Krishna's life. This is contemporaneous with Mahabharata. Mahabharata, number of you would have known that I spent 35 years, um, 15 years practically, finding out when Mahabharata war happened. If you look at this Krishna's biography out of this, it's so beautiful. Now, Mahabharata doesn't give you all the evidence that is required to put together Krishna's biography, but actually most of it does. And then if you take just little bit pieces that are required from Harimamsha, which is also considered an appendix or a Khila Parva to Mahabharata, yeah, and then Bhagavad Puran, which is all kind of attributed to Vyasa. So Vyasa wrote Mahabharata, then he felt, oh, oops, sorry, I forgot to write about Bhagwan Krishna. Actually, there's a lot that is written about Bhagwan Krishna, but more in the context of the Mahabharatan main story. Okay, not so much about Krishna exclusively. So Vyasa felt like writing something about Krishna. He said, hey, I missed writing about this important person. So he wrote Harimamsha. And then even then he felt, well, I think I'm missing something, just like you sit for your breakfast, You have a upma or a pohe or dosa, and this says, no, I need something. So you go and get some butter, and then you may go and get some chutney and whatnot. It's something like this. And so the Vyasa felt, yeah, I wrote Mahabharata, I wrote Harivansha, but still something is missing. And then the story goes that he wrote Bhagavad Puran, which is the bhakti aspect of it. Again, so if you want to understand, we talked of those three things, okay, before: the jnana, karma, and bhakti. You think of it, if we look at all our ancient literature of Sanatan, think of the Vedas as a dhyana pradhan, the mantra. You focus on the mantra, you chant the mantra. You don't, it's perfectly okay to think of the meaning. In fact, it's great to think of the meaning. But the point is, if you don't know the meaning, that's okay, but chant it properly, focus. That is a dhyana pradhan, the emphasis is on a dhyana when you are chanting the Vedas. Many of you may know many people who go to Gurukula, like my nephew, not the niece I'm mentioning here, but my other nephew who is in India. He went to Gurukula, and now he has done whole Yajurveda. He chants so beautifully and wonderfully. And so I was asking now, hey, I have this one Yajurveda mantra that I'm researching on. Can you tell me the meaning of it? So he chanted it very well, but he did not know the meaning of it. Now, of course, now he has come out of that school and now he's getting into the meaning. My point is, even when they taught them there, they did not emphasize knowing the meaning of it, maybe because of limited time, but definitely how to remember it, how to chant it properly, and so on. Recently, you would have heard the story of Devavrat, okay, where he chanted in a whatever the many 10 different ways of chanting and so on. My point is, so the Vedas are have an emphasis on a dhyana. If you look at the Ramayana, the emphasis is on a niti. It is still ityas. There are wars, there is all the violence there and non-violence and all the family drama, but the emphasis is on a niti. If you look at the Mahabharata, the emphasis is on a karma. Okay, in Ramayana there is no need for it. Okay, when Rama is told to go to Vanvas, he says, okay, I'm getting ready. Here in Arjuna, who knows, but now at the last minute he doesn't want to do his karma, and now the emphasis is on the karma. But it's not just in Bhagavad Gita. You're going to see that across the Mahabharata, the emphasis is on a karma. If you look at Upanishad, the emphasis is on a jnana. Okay, and if you look at the Bhagavad Puran, the emphasis is on a bhakti. Now, I was talking about how we use this in for ourselves, again through the examples of likes of Krishna and likes of Arjuna and likes of Bhim and likes of Bhagwan Ram. We get these examples. So you can see the timeline based on the three grantha that I mentioned. Krishna lived for about 107 to 108 years, from 5633 BC to 5525 BC. But if you see in the bottom right hand corner, the lasting revolutions of Krishna's intellectual legacy. Now, this is not to say that only he did four things, but these are the prominent ones that came to my mind, you can say, and that I try to emphasize through my lectures. So, for example, he redefined everything. There, I'm using the word non-violence, but that's not even limited. He redefined niti. Okay, and therefore many times we say, I mean, you might have heard the term murares tritiya pantha. If you ask, Krishna never gives a straight answer. Like, Arjuna asked him, like, so, okay, what should I do? You are saying the buddhi is bigger than karma, but you're asking me to do the karma. What should I do, buddhi or karma? And Krishna doesn't say, well, do buddhi or, the Sankhya yoga or a buddhi yoga. No, he says, any fool can do either. You have to combine the both, and he make use of it. And then he goes on. That's why the whole remaining 16 chapters. Otherwise, whatever Krishna wanted to say was done in the second chapter. So he gave a very different definition of ahimsa. Instead of a very coward type of violence or coward type of non-violence, a, uh, a violence set for based on the niti for the right purpose is the better way. For example, you might have heard Karl Popper's paradox of tolerance or paradox of intolerance. If we cannot be tolerant to an intolerant individual indefinitely. Okay, this is the paradox. We cannot be tolerant to intolerance, and that's what Krishna took it to the next level. Another one you may know, his another name is Gopal. So again, he focused on certain things. Now Krishna focused on many things. That's why we are calling him Purnavatar. But we, if there is anything that to learn from him, we can focus on a thing. and just focus, and just work on it. And you'll be amazed how much joy and excitement that we get and a fulfilling life that we feel. Okay. For example, now his other name is Gopal. Okay. And not that the people were not using milk before. Like in the Ramayana times, we have the story of a Kamadhenu and Nandini and Dileep going following the. But Krishna took it to the next level. In fact, he says, stop Indra Puja, just do the Govardhan Puja and do the Go Puja, and just basically emphasize the importance of milk. Now, this is not something new. Rigveda and Yajurveda, they talk about it. There is a mantra, Govishta Rema Amati Dureva Yavena Kshuda Puruhuta Vishwam. Just to fill our stomach, the java, the barley, the millet is sufficient. But if you want to get rid of our Amati, if we want to get rid of our Amati, hey cow, give me your essence, give me the Govishta, basically means milk and all the byproducts. So the connection with the intellect was understood, not the industrialized milk. In fact, the word dohan you might have used, out of when you are milking the cow, out of the four things, you have to give two to the baby. And do hana yani ki negative, minus. So subtract the two. Don't take two. They don't belong to you. They belong to the baby. And only when a satisfied cow and her baby, whatever remaining you take, that is going to be useful for you. Okay, that is the idea behind it. And so interestingly, you may know this, that eventually there were a lot of post Mahabharata migration, just like there were before Mahabharata, out of India migrations to other parts of the world, including Germany, okay, the Yamanya migration and so on. But with that, especially post Mahabharata, so you see the Europeans, the ability of them to consume the milk, that gene, and if you see the timing of that gene mutation, it goes back to the exact same time as Mahabharata, 7,500 years. Okay, if you have seen the work of Gilles Yao and so on. Anyways, the next thing is people were always following an individual path, not that the bhakti was not known, but Krishna basically integrated them. He said there is no difference. It's like, eating a small piece of Mysore pak. When you eat it, you thoroughly enjoy the whole thing. There is no way to separate the volume, the weight, and the flavor and the taste in the mouth. You cannot really separate them. It is a one unified experience, and you need all of this. Okay. After this, Mrinalini, at the end of the lecture afterwards, I'll send you one small write-up I did few years ago, 5 years ago, on Bhagavad Gita. And if there is a way, you can share this with your group, okay, on Bhagavad Gita, the integrated message of Krishna. And the hard work is the only way. Quickly, I'll tell that story. Sorry, I might have gone over my time here. And the hard work is the only way, in the sense of Krishna told Bhagavad Gita. Okay, then Mahabharata war happened. You know that. Fast forward to the time war is over, many other things happen. Bhishma Nirvan happens. Then Ashwamedh Yajna happens. Yudhishthira is coronated as the king. Now he does Ashwamedh. Ashwamedh is also over. So another year has gone by. Finally, Krishna is leaving for Dwarka. And Arjuna has become so attached to him that he doesn't want Krishna to go. So, maybe I'm just jokingly saying this, but Arjuna says, look, before the war, you told me this Bhagavad Gita, but I was not focused. There was so much on my mind, So can you repeat that Bhagavad Gita to me again? Just like the children ask the mothers, or parents, can you repeat that same story? Can you tell me the same story again? The one you told me yesterday. And what Krishna says is very, very interesting. Actually, it is just shows you the amazement, the greatness of Krishna is actually seen through that. What Krishna says, he says, hey, look, when I told you Bhagavad Gita, that was this apad dharma, a specific crisis, situation and crisis. I went in my zone, because I had to convince you to fight. And I was a yoga road. And in that state, I told you Bhagavad Gita. This is very interesting what Krishna says. You should go and read in Ashwamedha Parva, the Anugita and things before that. Krishna says, even if I want to tell you that, I cannot tell you. But since you have asked me, right now, whatever comes to my mind, let me tell you this. And whatever Bhagavan Krishna tells Arjun at that time, before he leaves for Dwarka, that is known as Anugita. And there are a lot of very interesting things in Anugita, but the one takeaway I want to say on this page is that tapo balam hi kevalam, tapo balam hi sadhanam. Hard work, again, that goes back to our endurance in conduct, okay, or achar saishnuta. Work, there is no alternate to actually action, okay. So tapo balam hi kevalam, all the great things that we see in life, whether in a material fashion, in a spiritual fashion, philosophical fashion, intuitive fashion, in a niti fashion. They are a product of a much hard work by many people. And again, there is no alternate to that hard work. Okay. This is the same thing. So I'll skip on that. Quickly, I'll take 2 minutes. Now, Ramayana, I didn't say anything about Ramayana. Now, this is the number of you who read Ramayana, you may already know what this is. This is the beginning of a Ramayana, okay? Balakanda. And, the first slok, it is like the discussion between Narad Muni and Valmiki. And Valmiki is asking Narad Muni, like, who is that person? Valmiki feels like, I want to write a book. I'm just simplifying it. Okay, write a book. And which is what? Write a itihasa. And he says, who is that person? I mean, can you think of a person that I should write about? And he makes the left side, what you see, he's giving a list. He says, Konvasmin Sampratam Loke, in our contemporary times, the contemporary times of Valmiki, who can you think of? Who is Gunavan, Kascha Viryavan, Dharmadnyascha, Krutatnyascha, Satyavakyo, Drudavrata. Do you see this, guys? You will see the same list practically that we saw in Bhagavad Gita, kind of getting repeated. Charitrene chako yukta sarvabhuteshu kohita vidvana kah samarthasya kaschayka priyadarshana, a pleasant behavior and so on. And I will not read the whole thing. Atmavan ko jitakrodo dityuman kona suyaka, and goes on and on. And then Narad Muni starts answering Valmiki. He says, is that even a question, man? Okay, don't you know? And of course, when this discussion is happening, keep in mind that Lava and Kusha are already in the ashram of Valmiki. So in a way, this is a narrative fallacy in the sense that just to get us into the right ground, mood, this narration comes. But Valmiki, of course, knows. But Narad Muni repeats the whole, a quick summary of who Bhagwan Ram is. Again, I'm not going to read that, but we're starting with the very first Balakanda and very first Sarga, and like verse number 8 through 18 and so on. This is basically a description of Bhagwan Ram. So what you say is what you saw in Bhagavad Gita as given as attributes, either as what constitutes the elements of knowledge or what constitutes the elements of a Daivi Pravrutti. Now you are seeing this materialize into the likes of Bhagwan Ram or likes of Bhagwan Krishna. And that is the benefit of it, because now we can relate to it. We can relate to them. And so therefore the definition of Ityasasi Dharmartha Kama Mokshanam Upadesha Samanvitam Purva Vruttam Kathayuktam Ityasam Prachakshate. So we are taking a historical instance, likes of the Ram and likes of Krishna and a Mahabharata, and they are put together in a Purva Vruttam Katha Yuktam, in a narrative form, in a story form. They are told to us so that they serve as a guidebook for us to understand Dharma, to understand spirituality, to understand what we need to do. Okay, and that's what the whole story is. Now, that's why I said I wanted to just be brief. Again, I already went over my time. I don't know if I want to go through this, probably not. What I'll do is I will stop here. Let me stop sharing. We'll get into questions, answers, and if required, I may share some slides. So where am I? Okay, back to you, Mrunalini, if you want to take over and see how we do questions and answers.
In case anybody has questions, please could raise hands and I could call out the names. Any questions? Yes, Gurudev.
Namaste, Nileshji.
Namaskar.
Sincere thanks for making time for this. I wanted to ask a quick question regarding the Venn diagram that you showed. I wanted to understand, where does Taraka, that is logic, and also Samshaya or Anumana feature in the Venn diagram? Which part of it?
Very good. So, for example, Anumana. So, what else you said? Samshay. What else?
Taraka or logic.
Tarka. Yeah. Okay, good. So, for example, if you want to use the framework of the three things like Vichar, Swatantriya, Niti, and action, it comes into Vichar. Okay, so we want to know the truth or the best approximation to the truth. And so then we have a Darshan Shastra, so we have a philosophy which is a Tattvajnana. Okay, so this can be considered a philosophy, the three foundations, but then how to actually execute that, how to see it, how to practically do it. That's why we have a darshan shastra like a Sankhya and Vaisheshika and Nyaya and whatnot. So in this case, of course, all darshans are saying the same thing, different aspects of it. It's like a cube of a Mysore Pak, which side you want to start. Okay,
Great.
you have a preference, you can start. There are like six sides, Mysore Pak cube has a six sides, and these are six darshanas, think of it like that.
Okay.
So how to think properly, how to draw the proper conclusions, for that as a starting point is a Nyaya Darshana. Okay, and then so Sankhya is like how to take the things out. Suppose you want to repair a car, how to take the things out, clean them properly, and how to put them properly back. That is what the Sankhya would be like, so different aspects of the same thing. Now in the Nyaya Darshana, there are 16 elements, it says. So Prameya, Prayojana, Drishtanta, Samshaya. Okay, so it's a Siddhanta. Avayava, the words that you use. Avayava, Tarka, Nirnaya, Vada. Jalpa, Vitanda, Hetva, Bhasa, Chala, Jati, Nigraha, Sthana. These are the 16 elements one should have a mastery if one wants to understand the Nyaya Darshan. And therefore, how to think properly, how to analyze things properly, what is the minimum requirement, who has the burden of proof, and how to understand the evidence, lack of evidence, and how to draw conclusions, when to realize that you are speculating, when to know that you can feel confident about the knowledge. So this all that you just said and more, that will fit into vichar swatantra, how to reach the right conclusion, so it will fit there.
Okay. Thank you, Nilesh.
Any other questions? Yes, Rohit.
Rohitji, go ahead.
Hello, namaskar.
Namaskar.
My name is Yamini. Can I talk to in Marathi? Means my
Yes,
question
you can. Yeah, you can talk to me in Marathi. I will translate the question and answer in English. How's that?
better. Thank you. So first, thank you so much. It's a dream come true की तुम्हाला बघितलं live आणि तुमच्याशी बोलतेय. So that is over excited right now I am. So मला form करता येत नाही question. But तुम्ही जे विचार स्वातंत्र्य whatever you explain in the diagram that is the base of Hindu religion. बट तेच ड्रॉबॅक नाहीये का हिंदू रिलिजनचं ते त्याच्यामुळे व्हॉट आय हॅव सीन की नुकसान खूप होतंय अँड द रिसर्च तुमचं रिसर्च किंवा ग्रेट रिसर्च आहेत जे यायला हवे ते येत नाहीयेत आणि मिसगाईड होत आहे न्यू जनरेशन स्पेशली डोंट यू तुम्हाला मी मला असं म्हणायचं की याच्याबद्दल काहीतरी ठोस केलं पाहिजे बिकॉज आपलीच नॉट एक्सटर्नल फोर्स किंवा नॉट इब्राहिमिक रिलिजियस पीपल बट हिंदू पीपल्स आर मिसयुजिंग आणि ते मिसगाईड केलं जात आहे सो पीपल लाईक अस किंवा तुमच्यासारखे आम्ही काही करू शकतो का किंवा आम्ही काही केलं पाहिजे का
ओके so yeah, got it. So a lot of things, so I'll quickly summarize. So she's I forgot the name already, but what's in the name, right?
Yamini.
Yamini ji, sorry, thank you. So she's very happy that we are talking right now here. And what she said is that the framework that I put forward in some way, I mean, it's a great framework, but is it not actually limiting us and in some sense hurting the Sanatan or hurting it? Which is to say, giving a Vichar Swatantra, for example, like everyone can think the way they want, right? That's kind of maybe gets interpreted. And therefore, like getting towards the truth or like having a unification or having a one position becomes a challenge. Is that fair, Yaminiji? That's what happens. Now, what we have seen also, I mean, if you think of isms, so Hinduism is okay to use the word, but Hinduism is not really a ism, because if you think all other religions, especially religions, are religions of a book. Usually there is a one book, Old Testament, New Testament, Quran. If you look at Abrahamic religions, Sanatana is a library. Okay. So if you there think it's just a one dish that is served, for example, Allah or a Muhammad or a Jesus or something, or Moses or whatever you want to call it. Here we have a buffet. Okay, if you want to just eat upma, that's perfectly fine. You want to mix upma with the pohe, that's okay too, So now there is that advantage. Of course, it comes with the limitations, but then our limitations actually happen only if you look at the vichar swatantra. If we truly look at the niti, that the niti must be followed, okay, the principles of niti, which means do you value truth over your truth, meaning what you believe to be that everyone should follow versus the truth. If you do that, then all you have to do this in that what Guru Datta ji asked, mm, like freedom of thought or vichar, or where does this tarka and everything comes. There is a word in Nyaya Darshana which says swarthanuman and pararthanuman. For example, how do I figure the satya of something? How I figure out that may be a very random process, like trial and error in science we call it, right? A random process. But once I understood it, if I have to convince other party, there is that niti formula. There is a method to madness. It's called Pararthanuman, and Nyaya Darshana calls it Pancha Avayava, which is exactly same as what modern science says, the formula or logic of scientific discovery. It's a triangulation of explanation, prediction, testing in the context of theory, in the context of background knowledge. So there is a rule. If you want to claim that you have made something innovation, you have made some revolution, some new discovery, new invention, you have to explain it using this 5-point formula, why this is new, why it is innovative, why it is revolutionary. When those rules are broken, then actually the process breaks. So it goes back to that niti point of view. So, but if we give up this format, and because of the things that you mentioned, the challenge is if you go to just saying, okay, hell with this, thou shall do this, then we have a Christianity, or not even Christianity, the Judaism, the 10 Commandments kind of thing, okay, or even Christianity, or the book, meaning, hey, if it is said in the book, you'll follow it. Or take isms like socialism, or take the isms like communism, or take the isms like capitalism. The money matters. Whoever has the maximum money, it doesn't matter how you earn it, by hook or crook, right? Then we have its limitations too. And now, even that we have seen this synthesis for last 200 years in our short-term memory, it has happened many times before, but we have seen it in a short-term memory. We can start seeing this, how America is now falling, for different reasons, okay, or the communism. So I remember as a child reading Soviet Desh. I don't know if you have seen this, but when I was 40 paisa, it used to come for 40 paise, the Marathi, the Indian currency, literally cheap, literally free, very nice glossy pages and a story and everything. But I used to see and say, oh, wow, this is so fascinating. It's like a utopia, a good stuff is going on in Russia. But those people who knew then, and now practically every one of us knew what was going on. So we do know that that method doesn't work. So now this method has its limitation, but just like we say, oh, the democracy may not be perfect, but democracy is still a better option. Similarly, what we have, this is something tried and tested by people, and that's why my work on antiquity basically tells you that this is going on for a very long time, and people have literally synthesized this, like churning the yogurt and taking out the makhan, and it has tried and tested, and it has lasted the test of time and people's wisdoms and the cycles of civilization. So that's why we have, again, on the shraddha is one of the niti, by the way. Okay, so the whole niti shraddha, in shraddha we have to take it, we have to practice it, and we have to actually experience it. Now your last point was, is there something you can do? Absolutely. And in a way, I think you are doing it. The very reason you are part of this, what is your group called, Adhyatmavari, the part of it, you are doing it. If you are studying Bhagavad Gita, if you are studying Ram Raksha, I am not worried. If you are doing it, Bhagavad Gita itself will tell you what to do next, and very likely you are doing it. Okay, I'm not worried. I don't feel the need to tell everyone or a group of people what they ought to do, because then I'll be breaking the Vichar Swatantra. If they come specifically asking for me, I will tell them, hey, I want to do this. Is this a good idea? But otherwise, Bhagavad Gita is extremely capable of telling people what to do next. Thank you.
Thank you.
Advait
Advait
Godbole is next. Is that right, Mrinalini?
Yes, yes, Advait, you can unmute yourself.
Yes, thank you.
Advait?
Nilesh, hello.
No,
Am I?
Namaskar. Yes, yes. Yeah,
Okay.
I can hear you.
Okay, very good. So thanks for again for your time. And you talked about a few different ideas already relating to my question. And you took us from some references from the Rigved through to Ramayana and Mahabharata about this. My question is, are there any specific chronological references that you found in your research about the various yogic schools of thought relating to the search for truth, relating to how one can live one's life in pursuit of that? Or do they only appear in, let's say, the Bhagavad Gita, or to some extent in the period of the Ramayana?
Okay, well, what happens is, so you mean what? Like different schools of thought in the sense of Darshana Shastra, like a yoga and Sankhya and things like that, you mean?
Uh, in some sense, yes, but also there are different schools of yogic thought itself, or even, let's say, Tantra Shastra or things like of that
Got
nature.
Got it, got it. Or even the way of worship, like say we will call in our time, say Arya Samaji, for example. Like you will see the offshoots of Arya Samaji, like roots of Arya Samaji, even in Mahabharata. Okay, and Narad Muni comes from and talks about the
Yeah,
distant land.
yeah.
Yeah, Shanti Parva, distant land, possibly referring to like Afghanistan, Iran, and the Persians, or what we call Zoroastrians, something like this. So even a puja paddhati, or the practicing paddhati, they you see Lokayata, many other philosophies, different ways of doing it, or Bhagavad Gita indirectly referring to, for example, 17th chapter, like Trivida Bhavati Shraddha Dehinansa Swabhavaja, like different types of Swabhava, and accordingly they doing certain things, like you said Tantra or Vamachar, and all these Dakshina path and whatnot. So for example, it will say Yajante Satvika Devan Yaksha Rakshamsi Rajasa Pretam Bhuta Ganashchanne Yajante Tamasa Jana. So the folks in the Swabha Satvikas mode, they tend to worship Yajante, tend to do the Yajan of Devas. In the mode of Rajasa, they do Yaksha and Rakshasa, those who are powerful people. The Rajasa people go after powerful people, make connections with powerful people to achieve their ends. And say that those who are Tamasi, they go for a Bhuta Kheta, which means like sometime the other types of Vidya, the black magic or whatnot, we will say. So the documentation exists because these grantha, in a way, kept it, they make it survive for us. That is not to say it did not exist, but if it's not mentioned, Atharva Veda mentions some of the black magic kind of things, But if it is not mentioned, if it's not documented, that has survived, then we don't know. But again, so it would have existed. We can only guess before that, before the documentation. So your question was there it before Ramayana? Very likely it was there. But again, I'll go back to the Nyaya Darshana. See, the Nyaya Darshana, one sutra says, Pramana Taschartha Pratipatte. Meaning, if you want to pratipadan, if you want to assert something, we need a proof. Okay, so we can definitely go up to 14,000 years because it is mentioned, or Atharva Veda because it is mentioned in Atharva Veda. A sutra in Nyaya Darshana just next to that, like this Pramana Taschartha Pratipatte is like a 4.2.29. If you go one next to it, it is 4.2.30. This is so beautiful actually. It says Pramana Anupapatya Upapattibhyam. Now it has two aspects. I'll mention both. They are very fascinating. The first one is something people can relate to. It says the evidence that doesn't exist, meaning the evidence that is not there, it is not useful to prove something. Now that everyone understands because it's almost a counter of the previous one I said. But the second aspect of Pramana Anupapatya Upapattibhyam is this: the evidence that doesn't exist, meaning a non-existent evidence, is not useful to disprove something also. Okay, this is also very important. So, for example, did it exist before Ramayana? We can say very likely it exists and leave it at that. But somebody cannot claim. This is what happens with the modern academia and archaeology, the mainstream archaeology, dirt archaeology, and many other branches. Same thing happens in genetics and linguistics and whatnot, or scripts. If the script didn't exist, then mean there must not be a script. No, it may not have existed anymore. So if you don't find something written beyond certain time, doesn't mean there was no script. Maybe it has not survived. Similar things with what you asked. Like, so the very likely, if you think of shamanic traditions of around the world, the Brazilian and everywhere, Africa, Papua New Guinea, it's kind of naturally in a human nature. I don't mean even the human nature; it's there in animal nature too. But let's restrict ourselves to kind of a sapiens. It is there, and that is indirectly covered in Bhagavad Gita. If you go to 15th chapter, it says, "Chandansi yasya pranani yastam vedasa vedavid." This knowledge is not stuck in some book.
Mhm.
You are left in the, say, a group of people is left in the forest and left on their own. They are going to figure this out again, if
Mhm.
they have this bright force. So it's not hiding somewhere. It is right there. Chandasi yasya pranani yastam vedasa vedavit. It's out there into the branches and the leaves of the cosmos, of the world. So people will figure it out. And that's kind of esoterically we say, when we captured the Vedas again, when the new creation comes, the Vedas come, Brahma comes and gives the Vedas again. Long
Mhm.
answer, but basically, definitely it must have existed. We only talk about the things that we have a documentation for.
Mhm. Okay, thank you.
Milinji, you are next.
Kalpana
Oh,
is
sorry,
first,
forgive
then
me. Yeah,
Milind.
yeah, sorry, I didn't see. I get to see only few faces here. Huh?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Kalpana ji, namaste.
Yeah, thank you, Nilesh ji. Thank you for for your time. In a recent podcast, you mentioned about your experience with Indologists in the US.
Hmm.
So my question is: Germany also has renowned faculties of Indology. Have you worked with them together? And in general, what is the future of Indology? Do you think the approach will change? Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, great question. So, have I worked with the Indologist in Germany? Well, I would say forget even America. It's not like I have worked with any one of them. I'm aware of their work, basically. Most of them, now that's not to say there are no exceptions. The exceptions are there everywhere. One thing I will say as a generic thing about all the Western Indologists is so Canada also, like where I went to university for my master's, University of Alberta. I forgot his name. Now he passed away, I think, and his daughter, who also is a professor, is now having in that chair. But that fellow, basically a very anti-India guy in a psyche, I would say. But, and I'm using the word but the kind of work he did, like when he goes to a certain manuscripts and the extent of tapashcharya he puts together and the detailed work he does is fascinating. In fact, me and some of my colleagues, we laugh at it. We just say, okay, these guys are doing the hard work, let them continue, and now we will make use of it. Okay. So one thing that can be said about all Western Indologists, or most of the Western Indologists, is they are very methodical what they do, and therefore actually I find it easy to show them why they are wrong when they are wrong. They are not always wrong, I'm saying. It's very easy. The Indian scene, actually, I'm actually frankly worried more about Indian scene, because what happens is in America, it's a kind of a dying profession. Like it survives because of a agenda driven, the deep state, and so the think tanks. That's why it survives. Otherwise, they are not there in search of the truth. They are there in search of manufacturing whatever the post-truth, postmodernism, whatever nonsense, the demand of the day. The situation of Indology, anthropology, all those disciplines in India, of course, their lackeys are here. But even the so-called genuine folks, meaning in their mind at least they have a good intentions. In India, I find them, again, I'm talking generalization, so there are exceptions, but I'm talking of 90% plus. So that's generalization enough. Are actually incompetent. They are not aware of what's going on in the world, how Indology gets used. They are not aware of our Darshan Shastra. They are not aware of the methods of science. And they will just fight and waste my time and waste time of the very few who are working. Simply, for example, I will say, if you're writing a PhD, what problem are you solving? And they just go like, what do you mean? What problem? Oh, I have to solve a problem? I said, well, then why are you doing a PhD? I mean, to take the knowledge further by something. And so then even the institute I work on, and there are like a good number of people here, all PhDs except me, and I have to convince them, and they agree on the face, but they don't get convinced. They say, no, Nileshji, my whole thesis is about defining the problem. I said, then that doesn't cut as a me for the thesis as a me for. But that's happens in anthropology. That's happening in Indology. So the long answer, outside people, I mean, let them do what they do. Of course, when they talk nonsense, we should expose them. But the problem with our folks is very emotional, very emotional. There was just a conference there that I couldn't attend in Delhi. But I mean, if you're interested, I will send the links to Mrunalini. Yeah, the kind of a boring discussion, but you should watch it. It was on the dating of Mahabharata and how we should all come together to one date, which I all agree. But you see the so-called people will consider as the top researchers, and the kind of carelessness and casualness with which they discuss the stuff is really worrying in that sense. Now, nothing worries me. I say, well, that's I'm so glad that they are documenting it. They are on the, just like the Western Indologists, they document, they publish papers, they publish books. But we have to do the tapasya to do this. So I don't think very highly of them. But in the West, when they do it, I make a good use of them. So and then there are few who are very sincere about it. There is, I mean, I know not just Germany, I know some in Italy, who have very interesting ideas about the development of linguistics and so on. And even in their independent way, they have come to the same conclusions as what the Emic tradition believes, or Emic tradition has come to. So it's not all negative, except we have to absolutely look for those gems. And that's where the challenge is.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yes, Milind.
Namaste, Nilesh.
Namaskar.
Thanks a lot for such a wonderful talk. And I really relished the entire session. Small question here, little off the topic, but you just mentioned it in your previous answer regarding the dating of Ramayana and Mahabharata. Most of the modern historians, astrologers, and so on, they take Ramayana around 10 to 15,000 years before the existing time. But if we see the Yuga cycle, which is given in the various different Vedic books, I'm referring to Srimad Bhagavatam. In that, it is clearly mentioned that the Kali Yuga is 432,000 years.
We'll just get to the question because I will need to give a long answer anyways, So yeah, I'll mention.
So the thing is
this is my most frequently asked question. In fact, this is the question that is asked in every lecture. My lecture is not complete without this question. So thank you. Okay. Go ahead. Yeah.
But yeah, in order to complete your lecture, I'm just asking this question. That Ramayana, Kali Yuga, 5,000 years gone. 8,000.
Yeah. So how do your question would be? So how the hell you make a connection with all this? Right? That is the question.
Yes.
Yeah.
So the total amount of years which I could calculate is 8,80,000 years at least.
Yeah.
Before that, we had the Treta Yuga.
Correct.
And now, how is it coming to this number?
Yeah. So 10 lakhs versus 14,000. How do I explain? Right? That is the question.
Yes.
Correct. First thing, other than me, Nilesh Oak, no other Ramayana researcher talks about going beyond 10,000 BC. Okay. So everyone else is 10,000 BC or last 10,000 years. Okay. All others. Okay. So that is one group, you can say. If you now, because Kalpana ji asked about the Western Indologist or German Indologist, all the Western Indologists, if you want to know where the Mahabharata and Ramayana happened, do you know where they are stuck? No exception. They are stuck in between 400 BC and 400 CE. Okay, no kidding. So because to them, it is the composition. And even that is stupid. Okay, so they think the composition was made in 400 BC and 400 CE. Now you ask them, what is your evidence? Remember, Pramana Taschartha Pratipatte. And they just scoff at you. Like, come on, everybody knows. Is that even a question? I said, I don't know. And what is your answer? And they scoff more. I go to Oxford, I go to Cambridge, I go to Harvard, I go to Chicago. That is the utter stupidity and nonsense. And I mean, that's like a really, I mean, that's not even academia. So that's why I'm saying this, how pathetic it is. So that's one group. The second group, like say, consider a pro-Indic group, but they are stuck in, most of them, 10,000 last 10,000 years. Then there is another pro-Indic group, a very traditional group, whatever you want to call them, Sanatani group, which Milinji, for a minute, you can assign yourself to that group, okay? And they will say, hold on, Kali Yuga is 432,000 years, and some years have gone by, maybe 5,000, 7,000, that's fine. But Dwapar is a whole 8,64,000 years in between, before the Treta Yuga comes. So at least go back 10 lakhs years for Ramayana, okay?
At least.
At least. Now you refer to Bhagavad Puran. Bhagavad Puran has even a very different story. That Bhagavad Puran story is not same as the story that we just discussed. Bhagavad Puran talks about the Ramayana happening in the 24th Mahayuga. Okay, 24th Treta Yuga. And then Mahabharata happening in 28th Mahayuga. Okay, so now if you use the same formulation of these 4.32 million years makes a one Mahayuga, then actually you are going multiple million years for Ramayana according to Bhagavad Puran. If you take the descriptions from Bhagavad Puran, you said it's very clearly stated. I can tell you this, most of the time, whatever is stated in our Grantha at any place is actually very clearly stated. The problem is how we interpret it. Okay, that's why if you go to Bhagavad Gita, it says Sarvasya Chaham Rudhi Sannivishto Matta Smrutir Jnana Apohanancha. Okay, so Matta Smruti, so I am the one who is giving the Smruti, the Samskara, the Jnana, the knowledge, and Apohanancha is usually, many people translate forgetfulness, but in this, that is also correct meaning, but in this case, correct meaning is Viveka. Viveka Buddhi. Apohanancha, you can see the meaning as Viveka. So I'm giving this Viveka. So what you have to do is, like, you have to understand in the context, and there are these different formulations. Again, it's a very long answer. I'm going to give a short answer, but I will tell you whether I give a long or short answer, you will be still stuck to your position, because that's what my experience is everywhere. What it is that yuga simply means a certain duration of time. Okay, just like a currency is a certain value. There are rupees, and then there are European euros, and then there is a dollar, and there is a different types of dollars. We say dollars, but there is a Canadian dollar, Australian dollar, and US dollar, and they are not the same, but we call a dollar. Okay, even Mexico, if you might find it funny, like Mexico also pesos, but they use the sign dollar. This is going back many years, 30 plus years, when I went there and I knew the pesos, and I said, my God, because the price was written in pesos, but the sign was a dollar, in Mexico. And I said, what? I'm paying $1,200. This is 30 years ago for salad. What's going on? So I'm saying, if we don't have the context, then this confusion happens. A short answer, but you can see me having possibly 20 videos. Usually, if you go type Yuga Dogma Nilesh Oak, you're going to find this. Yuga has many definitions. A simple definition means a certain period of time. Just a one generation can be a yuga. A one king ruling for that time can be a yuga, like Shivaji Maharaj Yuga, we can say. Modi Yuga is going on for about 10 plus years, that we can say. Krishna we call Yuga Purush because that's like a Krishna's era. Rama we call Yuga Purush because that's Rama's era. But when we call Rama Yuga Purush and Krishna Yuga Purush, we are not calling them in the sense of Treta Yuga Yuga Purush and Dwapar Yuga Yuga Purush. Then yuga has many other definitions. Say in Ayurveda, the definition of a yuga, it says in Satya Yuga, there was no disease. Now it is to be understood in a Viveka Buddhi as a other one. Now, not to say everybody will agree with my definition, but I tell this definition to Ayurveda Charya, and not everybody, but many agree with it. Okay. I say, which is to say, just like we in chemical engineering, we define an equilibrium. Equilibrium condition to solve the equations. It's like when somebody's health is good, that person is in Satya Yuga. Okay, and when somebody is ill, the person is no longer in Satya Yuga. Okay, so that's like Ayurveda. Charaka has given these definitions, by the way. He says in a different language. He says in Satya Yuga, nobody used to fall ill. Everybody was healthy. Now we don't know, there was no time like that. The people always felt ill. So it is like given in the equilibrium. I'll give you quickly a couple other definitions. There is a definition to your behavior, your yama niyama. So in that context, there is a Aitareya Brahman. Have you listened to my lectures before, Milinji?
Yeah, few of your podcasts.
Few. Okay. Yeah. So that's just a scratching the surface. Fine. There are 2,000 more. Okay. But so Aitareya Brahman, which is connected with the Rigveda, it says when you are sleeping. So all of us who are on the call right now, we have experience as per the Aitareya Brahmana definition of a yuga. We have experienced all four yuga in the last 24 hours. How's that? Aitareya Brahman says when you are sleeping, you are in a Kali Yuga. When you get up and you sit up, but still not like stand up and walking. When you just sit up, you are in a Dwapar Yuga. When you finally stand up and stretch your arms and you are ready to perform the action, you are in a Treta Yuga. And when you start walking, when you start doing the action, you are in a Satya Yuga. Krutam Sampadyate Charan. When you start walking, you are in a Satya Yuga. And therefore, if you want to stay in a Satya Yuga, keep walking. Charayveti, Charayveti, Charayveti. Okay, so for the Yama Niyama, that is the thing. And I'll just give one more. There are 36 definitions, by the way, and I just told you two or three. And I'll mention where this million comes from. But the other one is it's an emotional state. Like the Einstein story. You sit next to a beautiful lady for an hour, feels like a minute. You sit on a hot plate for a minute, feels like an hour. Okay, that's a relative type of time warp
Okay.
that you
Yes.
feel. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has given this Yugayitam Nimeshena Chakshusha Praurushayitam Shunyaditam Jagat Sarvam Govinda Virahename. Right? So you know that. Like so Viraha, I feel like one blip of a second feels like a yuga. Okay. And then Mahabharata gives 6 different definitions, but one of the definitions is Raja Kalasya Karanam. Depending on the administrator doing a certain yuga, that is a yuga. Okay. And actually Mahabharata gives detailed examples of it, like how Bhishmacharya brought a Satya Yuga, how Parshurama brought a Satya Yuga, how Bhagwan Ram brought us a Satya Yuga, and so on. And then this million yugas has absolutely nothing to do with the chronology.
Mm.
These 432,000 and 864,000, these are astronomy yuga. These are meant for astronomy calculations, so that the astronomy parameters like the movement of the mode, movement of the orbital period of the planets, and these are so long periods. The planets is nothing, 30 years is nothing. But just to give an idea, just like Rahu takes 18 years, which is the node of the moon going through complete round of 360 degree. But if you take the node of the Saturn, okay, forget about going through complete 360 degree. Just to go through 1 degree, Surya Siddhanta says it takes 3 lakhs years, 300,000 years. So to explain these big, very slow motions, they are using the Mahayuga is not sufficient. They have to say in a kalpa, one kalpa, there are 267 rounds. So it is used for that. Someone in somewhere made a mistake, like, just like in India, people say, come on, the euros are same as rupees when you go to Germany. That's not true, but India people want to believe that, it is how it is. And in the dollars, I used to hear that. So it is a confusion between this translation or substitution that we need to do. There are many ways, many acharyas have given beautiful commentaries. It's not million years, it's not multi-million years when it comes to chronology. That is not to say that we did not exist for millions of years. We as a humanity would have existed for millions of years. But as far as the history goes, okay, so as far as Ramayana goes, again, you watch my many other lectures, Valmiki Ramayana itself has internal evidence, both astronomy, non-astronomy, on the ground, in the sky, that will tell you Mahabharata is, sorry, Ramayana is not possible more than 15,000, beyond 15,000 years. It's not possible beyond 50,000 years. It's not possible beyond 60,000 years. It's not possible beyond 150,000 years. There are these limits, the upper boundaries given in the Valmiki Ramayana itself, that it's not possible beyond 15,000, beyond 50,000, beyond 60,000, beyond 150,000. What to speak of tens lakhs of years? Okay, but that is a confusion because we have misunderstood, taken Treta Yuga, blah 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 from one place and used a formula from astronomy for chronology, and that's our mistake.
Dhanyawad, Nilesh ji.
Thank
If
you.
possible, I will take your contact number from Mrunalini ji, and I would be
Yes.
really happy to discuss further.
Sure, but discuss meaning you have to watch the 2,000 videos first, okay? at least 20 videos on Yuga Dogma, okay? Because this is what I just briefly discussed. I have discussed it at length and multiple times. And It's the same, on the yoga, I even find I was in Australia in June, and the same person was asking the same question to the same individual, which is namely me, at different places. So one time, yeah, the same yoga questions. So actually in Brisbane, I asked like, oh, you mean the same question that you asked yesterday? And he nodded his head. I said, I gave the answer. Did you understand it and did you accept it? He said, I understood it. I said, what about acceptance? He said, like, it's kind of like this. I said, so if I tell today, do you think like it's going to get from here to get just like a better or something like this? It takes time. We have to give it a
It
time also.
was not about the dating, but it was more about, we are the Sangha Karyakartas here in Germany and in
Yeah.
Europe. And in that context, and I'm also connected with ISKCON. So
Yeah.
in that context, I wanted to
No, no,
actually.
no, no. Both contexts are good. Actually, with both contexts, I have with a Sangha, I have a connection of possibly 50 years. And with the ISKCON, I have a connection of 40 years. How's that? So many in ISKCON, like very senior disciples of Prabhupada, I mean, they are getting less and less in number now, as you may know. But they are very fascinated. They follow my work and even they invite me. They have invited me many times.
Yes.
Okay, they take it, they rationalize it in a very different way. That will be a long answer. And if you're talking of Sangha very recently, I don't know if you listen to Sri Mohan Bhagwat ji talking in Bangalore. He
Mhm.
specifically referred to Ramayana's time. He says, that is 12,000 BCE years ago. He referred to, and Govinda Dev Giriji talks about it. So slowly but surely, people are understanding it,
Yeah.
and it is going there. And we have to understand it, and we have to then spread it. I also believe that if you are not convinced about it, if one is not convinced about it, then one should not just take it blindly, and one should brutally criticize it, brutally critique it, because vade vade jayate tattva bodho, because that
Yes.
gives us opportunity for me to explain, just like you asking the question.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you.
ठीक है, धन्यवाद.
Nilesh,
Namaste.
there are four more questions. Do you still have time or
I have a time. I don't know if the others have
okay?
time, but those people who may be running out of time, they can leave. Let's give them a permission to leave. But I can
Okay,
be here as long as there are questions. How's that?
okay, sure, sure. Then Sanket ji, please go ahead.
जी धन्यवाद नीलेश जी great talk as always. Coming back to your first Venn diagram and specifically talking about vichar swatantra with respect to buddhi, you said tarka pramanas help reduce errors, uh, but there is bias in the human intellect, I believe. Is this bias mentioned in any of the ancient texts?
Yes, I mean it's all over. But let me correct what I said. I did not say tarka pramana creates errors. No, see what happens is we'll not go into why what causes errors. By the way, Nyaya beautifully discusses this, and we all will agree to that. It says pravartana lakshana dosha. See, if when somebody vartana, vartana is like action, and pravartana is like a very powerful action, very focused action, a special action. When you actually go to solve, like Marathi saying is "hastil त्याचे दात दिसतील" or something, whatever. So like somebody does an action, it's very easy. I'll use. I mean, you didn't necessarily meant that, but I want to clarify that. Have you heard this story where this was one painter, one artist? He made one painting. He put it in a public square, like you'll find in Germany or Italy, like a Florence or Rome. And he put a marker there saying, hey, please look at this picture. If you find any defect, just here is the chart. Take a chalk, write it down what the defect is, and mark it on the picture. When he came in the evening, there were lots of markers, X, 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 like, yeah, these are the mistakes in the picture. Now he had a similar copy of the same picture. He put it in another place, another day, and he said, hey, please write down the error, what it was, and then go correct it. Okay. And then there was not much corrections out there, because it's easy to point out the error, but it's difficult to correct it. So when an action happens, pravartana lakshana dosha, that's when actually the errors become visible. See, if we are just reading, say, Mahabharata, Ramayana, and we are not, nobody even attempts to find out when it happened, there is no error because nobody made an attempt. Once you make an error, once you make an attempt, then there is an error. So that's the first part. So I didn't say that like the tarka creates error. Not necessarily. I mean, any one of our action. But sorry, please, Sanket, can you repeat your question again?
Uh, yes, Nilesh. I meant to say Tarka and Pramanas help reduce errors in general in
Oh,
understanding.
sorry, sorry, I misunderstood. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
And
still
what was
exists
your
a
question?
bias. There
What
still
was your
exists.
question?
Yeah, sorry.
They will still exist. Yeah.
Yeah. And is it mentioned like there exist and this is the is it mentioned clearly in the ancient text that
Oh,
this?
yes, 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 yes. In fact, see, the so it is mentioned in many different ways in a different context, not just in a Darshan Shastra. It is even mentioned in the Upanishad. I'll just quote some. I will quote couple maybe just for managing time here. Um, but say what the Nyaya Darshana will say is, or modern science, it uses the term verisimilitude score or truth likeness score. Or just in a simple way to explain this, think of a tennis match, the best of five. So it says, don't just say this guy, player A won, just say what was the score between A and B, A and B versus 6-1, 6-0, 6-3, right? The best of five. So that gives us idea. Okay. So this guy won. I understand that. But suppose if it was like a 6-4, 6-4, 6-4, we say, yeah, this guy won, but the other guy was pretty good too. So the quantification helps you the extent. So truth, like I mean, our Indian texts don't necessarily, at least I'm not aware of talking about the truth likeness score, and that would be a long discussion how they kind of manage this. They manage it until the other party understands or the other party doesn't have a response, and therefore they have to accept the argument. So they don't necessarily go on a quantification. Like say Shankaracharya and Mandana Mishra, that continued until it's like a chess. The person they are playing back and forth, and then the other party says, yeah, I give up, right? You would have seen the scenes, which means the person accepts the defeat, and that this way it will stop. In a way there is a quantification, but it's not necessarily needs to be quantified. Modern science, especially, not everybody does it, but if you read Karl Popper's work, said very similitude score or truth likeness score is simply, so just to give an example, in case of my Mahabharata, say astronomy discussion, Mahabharata has 300 plus astronomy descriptions. Now they all point to, I will say, 255-61 BCE. Now, when I say this, is this a statement true? Well, it's like saying India won the cricket match, but that doesn't mean India did not lost wickets. Yeah, India did lose wickets. They won the match. Similarly, out of 300, do all the astronomy descriptions match for 55-61? Actual answer is no. There are about 6 or 7 that they do not match for 55-61 BCE, but other 300 plus, or if you have to just use 300, then I will say 293 do match. In case of Ramayana, close to 600 astronomy descriptions. Out of that, about 4 or 5, initially 22, and the list goes down to about 4 or 5 because 16 also come on the other side. So about say 5, okay, out of 600 do not match for 12,209. So error remains. Now your question, is there a reference to that in our text? Absolutely. Um, for example, take Upanishad. I mean, again, that's why I said it comes in a philosophical way, but it is there. Mundaka Upanishad, it says, Satyena labhyas tapasa yesha atma samyak jnanena brahmacharyena nityam. If you want to know the truth, if you want to know the Atma is in like the whole reality, let's say, the mystery, which cannot be found. But what is the second best, like the best approximation to the mystery is the truth. So Satyena labhyas tapasa yesha atma. If you want to know the mystery, the Atma, the Paramatma, the cosmos, the Brahma, whatever, then the way to get this is to take the path of the Satya. And how do you do it? Satyena labhyas tapasa yeshatma samyak jnanena brahmacharyena nityam. Through the knowledge, through the tapascharya, that is the brahmacharya, and samyak buddhi, that is that niti, the objective way of looking at it. You try to approach it. And then when you do this, and if you are successful, what happens? It says, Antah Sharire Jyotir Mayohi Shubram. You are going to start getting the vision of this Atma. Vision in the sense like the darshan. You are going to start understanding what is Brahma. Okay, like a Bhrugu Varuni Vidya, and that's, I will not digress there. So you see it, but the last line is very important. It says, to whom such a darshan happens of the Brahma, who understands this Brahma. It says, Yam Paschanti Yatayah Kshina Dosha. This is very interesting. The person, that yati, that great rishi or the individual, great individual person who has minimized his errors, yam paschanti yataya, such a yati who kshina dosha, who has made his dosha kshina. It doesn't talk of elimination of dosha, because there is, again, Dhaneshwara will talk about the same thing. You can minimize it, you cannot eliminate it. That understanding is there in the Upanishad. That understanding, Jnaneshwar talks about it. Jnaneshwar says, as long as you are in this body, even when you are become a siddha, you should live life like a sadhaka. You should follow the sadhaka. Why? Because you still have a minimal errors there. And the example he gives of that siddha is like a ripe mango, ripe fruit connected to the tree. So still it's in the body. So it should still consider part of the tree, should not consider independent, But when it separates from the tree, there is no pain involved, because actually the fruit has reached a perfection. So when it separates from the tree, the fruit doesn't feel the pain, and the tree also doesn't feel the pain of being cut or something. Just a ready fruit falls down. In mathematical language, those of you who do understand it, think of this as an asymptotic solution, which is like a hyperbola against that y and x axis. That curve is never reaching the meeting the x axis, but for practical purposes, it has met the x axis when x tends to infinity, y tends to infinity. And then sages in Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, they will also say, so asmakam sucharitani, okay, tani sevitavyani, no itarani, asmakam sucharitani, okay, toyo pasyani, no itarani. Meaning the guru is giving a final advice to the shishya when shishya is graduating. Guru has this realization. Guru is not considered himself perfect, although the student should consider guru as what you say, approximation to a perfection. But the guru is saying, Tasmakam sucharitani, what asmakam sucharitani, whatever is good in us, only take that, only practice that, only imbibe in yourself. Whatever is bad in us, do not take it. No itarani. So there is this idea of even the great personalities having limitations, having errors, even our solutions having errors is there. And the assurance and optimism is that in spite of these errors, we can still see the truth or close approximation to the truth. Sorry, long answer, Sanketji, but those are my 2 cents.
धन्यवाद गणेश जी.
Pradeep ji.
Namaskar, Nilishji. Thank
Namaskar.
you. Thank you for this wonderful talk. The question might be out of topic, but I would like your answer to that. In one of your podcasts, you beautifully explained about three tattvas and how existence is represented through them. And the question is, why is that every avatar or Yuga Purush is born in a royal or Brahmin family? Not in a poor family and rose from there. You know where this question coming from. But
yeah. And what are the three tattvas that I referred to? I mean, just so that you
Brahma,
and me
Vishnu,
are...
Maheshwar.
Got it. Okay. So the Brahma, Vishnu, Maheshwar, of course, for the benefit of others, it is done in the sense of the creation, sustenance, and dissolution, not the destruction. I mean, if there's a one takeaway, we shouldn't use the word destruction, because, you will see the whole entire Sanatana, Mumai Vamsho, Jiva Loke, Jiva Bhuta Sanatana, that is there. Or Dehinosmin Yatha Dehe Kaumariyam Yavanam Jara Tatha Dehantara Prapti Dhiras Tatra Namuyati. The Atma, it's a law of conservation of consciousness. It's nothing is getting destroyed per se, even not the prakriti, it's just getting modified. Now the question is, when the avatar comes, Sumati, whatever we just have that Bhagavad Gita verse, like Arjun asked, like, say, if somebody leaves this halfway, like, is it all gone? And Krishna says, no, the person begins, where he left. The system of engineering system of ATKT is there, allowed to keep the term, so all is not lost, so to say. Now, Shankaracharya, very interestingly, and I don't know if Pradeepji you're referring to that, but see, this is people's experience. So when Krishna is mentioning it, for example, maybe it is from a Krishna's perspective, right? So Krishna is, and in the context, now, what is the context that he's saying? See, this is in the time going back to 7,500 years. That time you hear this term Rajarshis and Brahmarshis. Okay,
Hmm.
so and you see the Veda there, the people who could afford to, or people who could focus on and so on, is basically from the Varna system point of view, the Brahmanas and Kshatriyas. And this is nothing to do with the others cannot study or anything. That is the emphasis. When I go to Gujarat, and frankly, I find Gujaratis tremendously, fascinatingly interested and amazing, doing amazing work. But even then, they will humbly say, कि अरे हम Gujaratis know we are into business, we are not interested in this philosophy and something. We will support you, but we cannot even understand. And that's not true. Actually, they do understand, but their priorities are there. They're focused on a prosperity. Yato abhyudaya nishreyasa siddhi. They're focused on abhyudaya. Somebody has to do it. My point is, so your question was why the poor are not referred to, because in the context that possibly Krishna is saying it to Arjuna. Arjuna is, where their thing is. I mean, Krishna comes from the Vaishya background, but again, don't forget he's a king, or a
Mhm.
kingmaker. And Arjuna himself is belonging to royal family. And in that context, it is said. Now, if you take that same shloka, I think it's 6th chapter or 8th chapter in Bhagavad Gita, and you see the commentary of Adi Shankaracharya. Actually, Adi Shankaracharya adds the word. So what is that shlok? If you can you say the shloks? Srimata, in there in the families of the knowledgeable families, personalities, or families of the well-to-do personalities, such people take birth, right? Shankaracharya adds, and Shankaracharya says, or in the family of a poor people. Shankaracharya adds in the commentary. Now, why Shankaracharya adds? I mean, this is what Vinoba has written about it. Vinoba says that is because that is Shankaracharya's his own realization. And he could actually see the benefit of being born in a poor family. He was born in a very poor family, and the certain things, certain detachments, like, attaining certain detachments, he found it easy. That is his experience. He's adding to it. And I will second that experience. I mean, like my background, I grew up in a village, first 15 years of my life. In fact, jokingly and realistically, I say, first 15 years I lived in 3 different villages, and electricity followed me, which is to say, once I leave that village, electricity came to that town, or the village, not even town. So actually it has its certain benefits. Like I had many less distractions. So it is a people's experience. I think that just comes. And keep in mind that there is a limitation of a 700 verses there,
Yeah.
you have to do it. And what Bhagavad Gita has done is a fabulous, but that's because of that. Many see, you cannot avoid the personal experience, and so that's why we say, otherwise both Ramayana and Mahabharata are itihasa, but Ramayana is emphasis on the niti, because that is not needed to be told, and in case of Mahabharata, the emphasis is on the karma, because that is where the problem is. Arjuna suddenly says, I'm not fighting, and that's the emphasis.
Thank you. Thank you, Nilesh.
Vrishali?
Who is next? Yeah, Vrushali ji, go ahead, unmute yourself.
Hello, this is Ameya in the name of
Ameya,
Roshali.
namaskar. Yeah.
Namaste, Nilesh ji. I'm a big fan. I keep watching your videos all the time. Uh, my question is about the idea that these epics, the two epics especially, they may be fictional. I mean, the evidences and all the information I see in your videos is about the geological events, astronomical events, all these events, but the
Hmm.
story described could still be fictional.
Hmm.
And maybe for the astronomical evidences, probably some authors who are not really that ancient would have used similar techniques to backdate things, and the stories would have been maybe written not so ages ago. So, how do
Hmm.
you address that?
Okay, so a great question. Everyone understood the question. So, for example, as much as we think this is a real history, just like a novel can be written, and somebody may use a modern software and find, somebody wants to place the novel 17,000 BC, even 17,182 BC, and a certain day they can go and see what the planetary position says and somehow put that into verses or in a prose, and you can write a novel about it. or geological things can be, historical or archaeological things can be used and written a novel, and people do write those kind of novels, historical novels. So the questions of Ameya is, so this may be all, after all, it may be a fiction, and not true. How do I answer that question? So Ameya, so you have to unmute yourself, because my question is, so based on this, so let's assume for a minute for this discussion, it is a fiction, let's say it is written as a fiction, but when do you think it was written? I mean, what is the oldest time you can think of that we can definitely say, hey, yeah, it is written as a fiction, but it was written 3 centuries ago, it was written 3 millenniums ago? What can you say?
Yeah, we wouldn't know.
No, we do know. See, for example, the oldest thing of Mahabharata you will find like a 14th century. So we know that it was written definitely, that a thing existed in 14th century.
Okay.
Okay, so I mean, you have to trust something. I mean, see, for example, for all it matters, like you and me and having this Adhyatmavari session, while we think it's happening in reality, this could be a dream, and afterwards you will wake up from your sleep and you says, oh my God, today I have to attend the section on Adhyatmavari. So how do we distinguish that? At some point we take it on a Shraddha, or we trust in something. I mean, there has to be Shraddha in something. So for example, if we have a Bhuja Patra, which can be dated by certain technique, and so if we know that it is 1400, 14th century, then we have to accept it is 14th century. Or then we go back and there are these counter things. I mean, something we have to believe. So if this is a dream, and this could be a dream, and in fact it is a dream, you think of it, we think of like a Jagruti, Swapni, Sushupti. So when we have a dream, when we come out of the dream, then we realize it is a dream. But think of all of our experience. I don't think anyone will disagree. When we are in the dream, we never think it is a dream. Although outside now we feel that the experience we feel in the dream is not as good, as sharp quality as we are having now. The great sages will tell us, when we go beyond this stage, we go into another Turiya Avastha and whatnot, then it feels like what is happening right now, including this session on Adhyatmavari, it feels like a dream. The quality of a reality of it is lot less. So my point is, we have to have some Shraddha into, I mean, some foundations on which we are discussing. So my point is, so Mahabharata can be Ramayana, then you can go back and find the manuscripts which go back. So for example, just take this. Nilakanta Chaturdhar, Shivaji, do you believe Shivaji Maharaj is a fiction, or it happened really?
Definitely not fiction.
Okay. What about Rana Pratap? Or let's go back. What about say Kalidas? Is it a fiction, or it is real, or we just don't know now? Now that we went back, say, I don't know, 2000 years.
Yeah, I
What?
wouldn't know.
No, but
I
okay.
wouldn't
So
know.
okay. So how far back you feel confident, and beyond which you don't feel confident? Shakespeare, real, fiction?
Shakespeare was real. Yeah,
Gnaneshwar, 800 years ago, real, fiction?
real. Yeah.
Okay, so so now you have to ask the question. Take Gnaneshwar, take Ram, and take Krishna. Okay, again, this will be a long discussion. You can watch my other talk. You will find very interesting. And did you? You are my fan. You said. Have you watched the recent one? My podcast with Bharat Varta with Roshan Kariappa in Bengaluru. Do watch that. So what you are
Okay.
asking, that question came into that. Okay, so Bharat Varta, Bharat Varta. This is what we call, again, I will not answer that. I mean, I am answering it in a way. We call the epistemological and ontological issue. Epistemological is what are the limits of our knowledge. So how do we know that something truly happened uh, yesterday, or 300 years ago, or 3 millenniums ago, or 30 millenniums ago? And the other one is ontology, which is to say, when we see certain evidence, or when we hear something, when we read something, when somebody tells us something, how do we know that this is true? Okay, so ontology is that issue, and epistemology is the limits of our knowledge. That issue is not limited to Ram and Krishna. That issue is equally applicable to Shivaji Maharaj, equally applicable to Dnyaneshwar, equally applicable to Kalidas. But because of our intrinsic biases, we don't realize it. For example, again, I don't want to take more time on this, but if we had this discussion, therefore I said, listen to that Bharat Varta, because that same discussion happened, and you'll see for briefly, for at least 2 minutes, we had that discussion, and you will see what I mean. Which is to say, proving that truly Shivaji Maharaj happened is not any more easier than proving Rama happened or Mahabharata happened. But to our subjective judgment, it feels like, come on, Nilesh, are you kidding? Shiva, what are you saying? Shivaji Maharaj fiction? But actually, if you actually go on to prove it to someone, you'll be surprised. That what method are you going to use? What evidence are you going to use? That literally something happened. There is no way to prove it, as much as what we are doing right now. I mean, what is this discussion? Is this really a dream or a reality? It is also not very easy to prove. These are the frontiers and the cutting edges of a modern physical, theoretical physics and whatnot too, by the way. So this is an epistemological issue, ontological issue. The issues are exactly same. In fact, what I will tell you, and I have said that, and I have somebody made a slide for me, is that frankly the amount of evidence, the in a scientific language what we call crucial evidence, the amount of crucial evidence for the existence of likes of Ram and Krishna is actually a lot more than say Rana Pratap, Jnaneshwar, Shivaji Maharaj, Kalidas, Jesus, Shankaracharya, and on and on. But that's a long subject. But thank you for asking that questions. Actually, it's a very important question. um, you may want to study more on theoretical physics, like we call philosophical issues in quantum mechanics, and epistemology, ontology, and definitely the other guys who might have found this fascinating. And Ameya, it is very fascinating question. Like, how do we know that something truly happened? That's both epistemological and ontological issue. Um, that's a very interesting issue. So somewhere we just make an assumption. It's like people asking what was there before Big Bang, and you might have heard the anthropomorphic answer, whatever they call it, is jokingly they say there was a absence of your question, your this question, because, and so how come the whole Big Bang, all the way the forces worked in such a way that the earth was formed? I mean, the life occurred on the earth. And the anthropological answer to that is so that you can ask this question. So these are the kind of funny answers people give, because truly we reach the limits of our knowledge, we reach the limits of what we can comprehend, and at some point, and by the way, nobody asked that question, but just like Sanket ji had asked the question, is there a reference to that in our Shastra? The answer is yes. For example, in Nyaya Darshana, it is called Prakarana Sama, meaning you can go perpetually asking this question, ultimate regression, going regressing backward. At some point, you have to stop, because going beyond that is not useful in a pragmatic sense. Okay, or if you go to Rigveda, the 10th mandala, 10.129, many of you would have heard the Nasadiya Sukta, like what was there before, how did it all began. And it says there was no day and there was no night, there was no Sat and there was no Asat. That's how it begins, the Nasadiya Sukta. And then somebody says, well, let's ask the Devas, maybe they know. And then he says, well, hold on, that time even the Devas were not there. And he says, let's ask that ultimate force, which all created this or something. And then the Sukta in the 7th Richa, it ends saying, well, the last Richa, it says, maybe he knows, maybe he knows not. Okay, so there is the limit. That is the limit of our thing. And what happens as the science and technology progresses, possibly we have a more ways to know it, but ultimately there will always be a limit. In the words of Karl Popper, he says, while we differ in the little bits that you and me know, I mean, Ameya, you might know a little less than what I do, while differing in little bits of knowledge that we know, when it comes to ultimate ignorance, we are all equal. Okay, so I'll stop on that. We can go to the next question. Thank you for asking that great question. Very important.
Thank you, Nilesh.
Rohit.
Rohit.
Rohit,
Or
hello, sir. Once again, me. I have two questions now. So one is in your so many videos when you were explaining Ramayana and all, I heard that you were saying that Ravan and Dasharath can be a character. I mean the person. So many persons
position.
had a name. Yeah. So same way, like Vishwamitra and Vashishta also can be this one, because we can see the reference of Vishwamitra and Vashishta in Dashayadni Yuddha. So that is
Yes,
very
yes,
long back. So is it the
yes.
possibility? Okay,
Is
that
that
is
the question?
yeah,
Is
that
that
is
the
my
yeah?
yeah, that is my first question. And the second one is, when you talk about Trishula in Ananta in South America, uh, there is a reference of Inca culture, and there are some of way big roads, and where, so it is some people. I mean, some scientists or some researchers say that might be the aliens or the external things. So,
Hmm.
is there a possibility of that too? These are my
Yeah.
two questions.
Got it. I got it. Yeah. So the second question is, I mean, so could this be aliens? Well, what we say is, if Vichar Swatantra, in that we say anything is possible. Now, when we start giving a credence to something, is that pramana tasyartha pratipatte. If somebody is claiming something, the burden of proof is on that person. Okay. So, for example, they have to say, why do they think it's aliens, and why do they not think it could be human beings traveling from one continent to another, and so on, right? So it's possible. So now we have gone to the moon, right? And now we have sent the shuttles anyways to the Mars and Saturn and whatnot. So why discount the possibility? I mean, I know you are not doing it, but I am also not discounting the possibility that some folks from some other planet, another system, in principle, can come into this. So it is a possibility. But just because it's a possibility doesn't mean it is what it is. Like somebody who are putting this, and I know, have you heard the name Eric von Daniken?
Yes.
He's in Switzerland, I mean, so very old now, almost 92. I met him 2 years ago. In the Ancient Civilizations Conference done by Gaia, if you know that. They do it like once in 2 years, I forgot. And they decide who they invite. They invite 11 lecturers, 11 speakers. That is their format. And and you may be pleased to know, I don't know if you knew that, I was one of the 11 that was chosen, 2 years ago. And so Eric, so because of this all funky talks I was hearing about aliens and all, and so even I recalled Eric von Daniken before even going to the conference. And the funny enough, I was watching the previous year's conferences, whatnot. And when I went there, he was on my mind. And because I read about him when I was an undergrad engineering student, which is late 80s. So I thought, and he was already old by then, because he has published this for many years, like 70s or whatnot. So I shouldn't have thought that way, but I will admit, like I thought he must be so old, he must be gone. and then I go to Denver, Boulder, and right in front of me, he stands up there, in our get together sort of a mixer ball, and says, "My God, he's there." And he gave a very fascinating lecture. If you have access to Gaia Talks, Gaia, GAIA, Gaia platform, do listen to his talk. He has given an extremely fascinating lecture. In fact, when I met him, he repeated the same lecture that he had given the previous year, which is understandable. Even I repeat my lectures practically. He has made a very good case for aliens, okay, very good case, but no specific evidence, but has made a very impressive case. So you may want to listen to that. And I definitely don't discount it. But just because I don't discount it doesn't mean like I want to immediately start giving a lectures on how there are aliens everywhere. In some sense, actually, if you consider the Indian context, Kshane Punye Martya Lokam Vishanti, again, go back to Bhagavad Gita, we are all aliens. Like when we get a punya, we go to other planet. When the punya is consumed, we come and take birth here. In that sense, we are aliens too. It's a different way of thinking of aliens. So that's the one. And the first one, yeah, even the Parshurama, you can see many Parshuramas. Parshurama is there before Ramayana. Parshurama is there in Ramayana. Parshurama is there in Mahabharata, and so on. Okay. Same thing with Vishwamitra, same thing with Vasishta. And so you're right.
Even I read his book when I was in a school. So I can relate what you are saying.
The what is Chariots of Gods, you mean, right? Yeah. Now I found that book to be very hopeless, but I mean I didn't like it in a way. Of course, I read it multiple times, but meeting him and especially listening to his recent lecture, so that Gaia talk, if you get it, do listen to it. It's frankly makes you think in a different way, and it's a very impressive way. I was thoroughly impressed listening to him there. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Next.
Okay, the last question, Shwetamri.
Okay. Go ahead.
Namaste.
Shwetamber.
Can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Yes. Thank you. First of all, thank you very much, Nileshji, for giving us this opportunity for the presentation and for asking the questions. Um, I have two, three questions. And is it okay if I ask it in Marathi?
Huh, that's fine. Maybe just ask one question at a time and I will try to give a short answer. Okay.
Yes, the first
Otherwise, I'll
very,
forget the questions. Yeah. Just one at
okay.
a time. Yeah.
The basic question I will ask in English. Um, oh, what sources can I refer to when I want to search your talks and your the books and everything? How can I search for it? What are the sources?
Okay. Yeah, I would say start with Google search, Nilesh Oak. If you are in a YouTube, just types in search YouTube, and I mean you in YouTube Nilesh Oak, and you are going to
Mhm,
get the talks. And once
mhm.
the YouTube what the algorithm is such that if you watch my 20 talks, then you are going to get 20 more, and that's how it works.
Okay.
Books, same thing. Just start with the
Mhm.
Google, Subo publication, Amazon, everywhere they are there.
Okay.
Next,
Thank you.
it was
I
easy.
s-
Thank you.
I saw your two talks, one on YouTube, one on beer biceps, and one on Prachyam. So that I started with that. Now I want to listen to more. So I ask this question.
Yeah, yeah.
आता
There are
मात्र मी
2,000
मराठीत
more, 2,000 plus more. Okay.
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
definitely.
Right.
And I wanted
Yeah.
to actually find them, but I couldn't. That's why I asked. Thank you very much. आता मी दुसरा प्रश्न मात्र मराठीत विचारेन. अं, जेव्हा तुम्ही अवतार ह्या गोष्टीबद्दल बोलत होतात आणि रामायण असो किंवा महाभारत असो, मग एखादा अवतार जेव्हा येणार असेल पृथ्वीवर, तेव्हा आपल्या हे उपनिषद असो किंवा आपल्या या सगळ्या याच्यामध्ये कुठे ते असं मेन्शन केलं असतं का, की अशा परिस्थिती जेव्हा तयार होतील तेव्हाच अवतार येईल किंवा अशा गोष्टी जर घडल्या तरच अवतार येईल?
Okay, great question. Let me, for the benefit of others, I'll quickly translate that. So, like when we talk about the avatar, is it already predicted or predicted as a specific avatar, like the Kalki avatar that we hear? She didn't say that. Or is there a specific condition that is given that, hey, if this happens, then the avatar will come? Let me give a crisp but detailed answer on this. Actually, if you go to Rigveda says actually there is a avatar of a ultimate reality, Bhagwan, Krishna, not Krishna, Bhagwan, Ishwar, whatever you want to call it, happening all the time. If it doesn't happen, it will not sustain the universe. Okay, it will not sustain. Just a simply modified form of it is in Bhagavad Gita. Yada yada hi dharmasya glanir bhavati bharata abhyuttanam adharmasya, and you know that. Pavitranaya sadhuna vinashaya cha dushkrutam. Meaning they both must be there. The dushkruta people must be there, but the sadhu must be there. Otherwise, the avatar may not come. If all druggists and drunkards are fighting, police would say, let them fight, If there is some good person to be saved, then the avatar may come. So we need to be good for that. Somebody must be there. But so avatar is happening all the time, but we just mention certain names and we call them avatar because, just to give you as a metaphor, and I have used that metaphor many times, imagine Ganga, river Ganga, the whole Pavitra Ganga, starting with the Gangotri and all the way going to the Bay of Ganga Sagar, Bay of Bengal. It is all considered Pavitra, in our Shraddha and all that. However, Rishikesh, Haridwar, Prayagraj, Varanasi are more pavitra. Those are Tirtha Kshetra. Because some very intensified something, some aspects come there on the bank of Ganga there. Something more is happening, although all Ganga is pure. Same thing, there are many avatar of the ultimate Paramatma are happening. But when they come intensified, just like in an intensified form they come together, we call them avatar. And then there are variations of avatar, Purna avatar and Shakta avatar and Ausha avatar and so on. So just like from Ganga, Gangotri to the Bay of Bengal, you have the whole Ganga Pavitra, but then we have Rishikesh, Haridwar, Varanasi and Prayagraj and few other places. That way we have the Parshuram and Ram and Krishna and so on. Okay, in that way. Also, our understanding of avatar, although for ordinary purposes, just like when you are telling the kindergarten kids, you just say, this is how it is. Don't argue. I tell you and you must listen. But then afterwards, you say, you can question Newton, you can question Einstein. In the same fashion, when you start understanding avatar, you understand avatar in the sense of falahetu, which is to say, because somebody did something great, we start questioning, could this be avatar? Or say in child prodigy, we say somebody like a 10-year-old knowing whole Bhagavad Gita and 10 other things. We said this guy must be Purva Punya, must be the Purva Punya. Why? Now we start making phala, we see the outcome, and based on that we start reasoning, which is hetu. It's same thing happens for avatar also. So just one bit long answer. So for you take a certain avatar, just say for example, say Balaram, okay? Depending on who is commenting on it, so whether Ramanujacharya is commenting on it, or say Rupa Goswami in a Gaudiya tradition, or Jiva Goswami is commenting on it, or some other person, they have their different reflection. So Jiva Goswami says Balaram is a Purnavatar, but Ramanujacharya says he's a Anshavatar. And these variations are there, and they are to be simply enjoyed. If it agrees with you, you agree with it. If it doesn't agree, there is no reason to fight. Why fight? So that's what it is. So there are variations. So in most cases, the avatar are understood after the fact. I'll give you one example of that. In Bhagavad Puran, there is a statement that says, what a misfortune of these Yadus. The Yadu dynasty of Bhagwan Krishna. It says Krishna was right in the middle of them, but these fools did not understand the greatness of him when he was around. So many times we understand the greatness and the avatarhood long after that person is come and gone. In Mahabharata, Rama is mentioned. Okay, the importance of Rama is understood. Ramayana is repeated 3 times, Ramopakyan. But still in Mahabharata, Bhagwan Ram is not the Bhagwan Ram the way it is for us today. So it takes time. Hope that helps. Okay.
सर मग तर वेळ लागतो, मग आपण एक कल्कीचं कसं काय आधीच बोलू शकतो की असं होणार आहे? तो माझा लगेच नेक्स्ट प्रश्न होता.
No, this is also no, like telling the child, like so hey, if you don't finish your medicine, then the ghost will come. Okay, outside cops is standing. So again, this is a kindergarten stuff sometime. So some people say, oh, so all the avatars are gone, finished. He says, no, there is one coming. Okay, it's like that. For example, if you go to Bhagavad Puran, like we talk of 10 Dashavatar, but that's not only, there is not 10. If you go to Bhagavad Puran, you will hear list of 18. Another place you will hear the list of 24. And as I said, actually there are infinite. Rigveda talks about the avatar is happening every minute, every second. Otherwise the cosmos would not survive. Okay. And next, any other question?
हो, आणि अजून एक मग प्रश्न होता की तो मोर जॉग्राफिकल आहे असा. तुम्ही एका पॉडकास्टमध्ये आधी सुद्धा म्हटलं होतं की जेव्हा महाभारत झालं त्यानंतर खूप किंवा त्यावेळेस खूप मोठ्या प्रमाणावर मायग्रेशन झालं आणि तसं बऱ्याच वेळा इतिहासात मायग्रेशन झालेलं आहे. तर मग हे जे मायग्रेशन आहे ह्याची नोंद झालेली आहे का प्रत्येक वेळेस, काय हे आपल्यालाच शोधावं लागतं? म्हणजे
we are known in what way? Like somebody writing like, hey, here they went. Yeah, well, they are written, but the timestamp is not always written. Like there is a Dhruyu, Anu, Amavasu migrations to the west. They come in a different Puranas, a different what you call Gruhya Sutras and Sulba Sutras, and everywhere they come in the Puranas, they come in this, but they come is in a haphazard way. Somebody felt like noting it down, something like this. Now we are using this, and then using the different markers, the genetic markers we find, anthropological markers we find, the markers of agriculture, not the genetics only of human beings, the genetics of the cows, the genetics in the domestic mouse, the genetics of agriculture, genetics of cotton, and through that we are making these inferences. They are out of India migration. And that's not to deny there were no inward migration. There were inward migrations too. People who go to Germany, Indians who go to Germany also come back to India, and America, they come back. So that is also happening. If you go back more than 4,000 years ago, the current nonsense of us versus them, meaning I don't mean in India, but who went the Aryan invasion nonsense, it was simply there is no room for it. It's pure nonsense. It's agenda, it's a idiocy, it's stupidity. That's what it is. People were going back and forth. that was there. But there are enough markers to say that a lot that came out as a humanity, lot that came out of India. That is not to say everything came out of India, and that is not to say other parts of the world did not give it to India. It is there. But if somebody is saying the Aryan came out of outside, that's utter nonsense. If there came Sanskrit came from outside, and it might have come, certain aspects might have come. But as a development of Sanskrit, it is all India. I mean, the proof is there. Same thing for Aryans. There are no Aryans outside. There is no word Arya. They got it from India, and now they want to put it outside. But many great things like Asuras, for example. Asura is not a bad term. In Rigveda, Asuras are extremely powerful people. Asura title is used as an honorific for Indra and Varuna. The Surya Siddhanta, whole astronomy, the head, that the book we have today is a Mayasura. So we're not looking at Asuras in a bad way. They were very powerful people. Now, sometime one guy gets a bad name, and then this name continues. So that's what it is.
मग
Okay.
जर मग मायग्रेशनच्या रिलेटेडच मग तो छोटासा अजून एक प्रश्न होता की मग जर एवढं झालंय की इन आणि आउट असं मायग्रेशन झालंय, मग तरी असं आहे का की सनातन हा फक्त मग इंडियालाच तेवढाच असा बांधील राहिला का, असा तो पसरला नाहीच फारसा?
No, it's like we are shrinking, and now it is in India. But if you go to now, my latest book is Sugriva's Atlas. You may want to read it. Where it talks about. I mean, I don't know if I have written that. Now I don't even remember what I wrote there. But Valmiki Ramayana talks about having the ashramas of the sages in Carpathian mountains. Okay, so they were there. Maybe in a less number, but they were there. And Patala, the South America, there is a varnan of people doing tapasya there and all of this. So we are in no way we are saying it is only India.
थँक्यू व्हेरी मच सर. खूप खूप मोठा ऑनर आहे की तुम्हाला असं प्रत्यक्ष ऐकायला मिळतंय आणि तुमच्याशी बोलता येतंय. खूप खूप धन्यवाद. खूप धन्यवाद.
धन्यवाद.
अद्वैत,
मृणालिनी.
अजून एक शेवटचा प्रश्न आहे.
Okay, let's make this the last question. Okay, all right.
Okay,
Yeah, go
great. So you mentioned, Nilesh, that it was in some other podcast, but I think it's connected to some of the questions that have been asked. That it is possible that some sages, such as Agastya, for example, or Vyas, for example, they have been mentioned in multiple texts across times, that thousands of years, so that the timelines that are greater than human lifetimes. And that you've suggested elsewhere that they could be titles rather than the same individuals. How then could we? The first question is: does that also could that also be true for, let's say, the Chiranjeevin like Hanuman? And a related question is: how do we then? So, if the answer to that is yes, how do we square the fact that the names of their parents also are the same?
Okay, no, great question. So actually, there are 2-3 questions. So let's see if we can quickly spread that. So, like say Agastya, for thousands of years, what happens is they are and they can be multiple individuals with the same name. Sometimes it's the same kula. So, for example, my Gotra is Vasishta. So Vasishta Rishi was there in the Ramayana times. Vasishta Rishi was there before Ramayana times. Vasishta Rishi was there in Mahabharata, and Vasishta Rishi is even here today. That's Nilesh Oak, and then I'm not the only Vasishta. There are many other Vasishta kind of thing, right? Okay, we can think it like this. Then your other question, but then also understand that when we talk of Agastya in our text, sometimes we are talking of the Agastya star and not the individual. Okay, so Agastya going south actually has nothing to do with the individual going to the south. Again, if you want to follow further, check work of my colleague and co-researcher Rupa Bhati. Okay, so
I listened to one of her talks recently, but then if we have time, maybe I can ask a follow-on question. But yeah, please go on.
So Sangam talks. No, I mean that will be a long discussion, but we'll listen to her first. Sangam talks and whatnot. Okay. Your second point was, sorry, help me. What was the next thing you asked?
So the second point was the
Chiranjeev.
The
And how
Chiranjeevi,
I got
yes.
it. And how then their parents' names are similar.
Mhm.
Okay. One is a Chiranjeev. Quickly, the Chiranjeev concept, again, many acharyas have commented. Chiranjeeva, Chira, Achira. So Chira means long, Achira means short or small or short, in that sense. So when we give a Ashirwad, Chiranjeevi Bhava, we are not saying you're going to live forever. Actually, we meant you have a long life. When the Chiranjeevi word is used, it is used in the sense of different interpretations. First thing, a long life. They had a long life. The other one is when we see the list, and those are not the only Chiranjeeva, but you might have known the list: Ashwathama, Balir Vyaso, Hanuma, Vasya, Vibhishana, Krupa, Parshuramashcha, Saptaite, Chiranjeevina. One of the acharyas or few acharyas have commented, we call them Chiranjeev because we do not know how they ended their life, meaning how, when, or exactly where their life ended. That's why, because we don't have a clear idea, they are called Chiranjeev. You can watch my additional 20 talks. I have answered that same question with some additional examples. The typical traditions that we find in India, I will not just repeat those, which also relate to this Chiranjeev. But your last third question, third part of the question, how come they have the same names? Very interesting. Many times, actually, they do have a same names. That is actually a reality. Okay, I'll give you some examples of that. But other times what happens is, again, so first let me give you example why many times they have the same names. Okay, so if you take, for example, Shivaji Maharaja's genealogy, or even the Ramayana genealogy or Mahabharata genealogy, or I was in Indore recently, like Ahalyabai Holkar, the Holkar, Mallarrao Holkar genealogy. See, there is the whole genealogy of last 300 years and many, many individuals there. But surprise, surprise, like Mallarrao, Shivaji Rao, Yashwant Rao, and Raghoji Rao, or something like a 4 or 5 names, and Tukoji Rao. Out of these five names have been repeated like a 20, 30 times there, something like this. So to the extent the permutation combination also they come repeatedly, and the ladies' names, girls' names are also Ganga, Yamuna, Saraswati, and I'm just making it simplified. So it gets repeated. This one aspect. The last aspect is what happens is many times some another Parshuram will come and do some great work, because there were many Parshurams. The Parshurams are there, and then Mahabharata, Ramayana, and before and after, and so on. So now what happens when that Parshuram story is narrated? This is known as a hagiography or narrative fallacy. Because when you tell the story, if you don't tell the details, then people say, oh, what was the name of this mother? Is it the same Parshuram? And because the emphasis is on the story and not so much the biography of that person, he says, yeah, same Parshuram. Because the story is important to be told, So that's why then every time the Renuka is the mother and Jamadagni is the father, if you're telling the story of a Parshuram. Because when we don't know, and if we leave the blanks, then people don't pay attention. Just like, say, when somebody asks the question about the Yuga, until that Yuga question is answered, I tell people when I talk of Ramayana, I say, guys, now I told you 14,000 years ago, I know you're going to get stuck in the Yuga and you're not going to pay attention to anything I'm going to say about Ramayana. So forget that Yuga business for now, otherwise you'll not pay attention to anything else, because the guy is stuck there. He says, you are saying 14,000, man, I want at least 10 lakhs years. Okay, same thing. You tell about someone like, one time a great Maratha warrior Shivaji was riding on a horse. As soon as you hear this, what do you think? Immediately the Jizabai is his mother, but Shivaji was not the only Maratha warrior. Actually, there were many Maratha warriors, great warriors with the name Shivaji. So because of that, when people don't know the answer, people try to give the simplistic answer that carries the moment and go on. Frankly, I would have done that in answering these questions, because if I have to give a detailed answer, there will be no end. Like, for example, remember that question about Ameya's question, did it really happen? We can discuss this until tomorrow, same time, 24 hours, and still there is no answer to that. So therefore, to sometimes simplify things, crisp and cut, we give an answer and we move on to the point, because the point behind that story may not have anything to do with which Vishwamitra or which Rishi. Just to add to that, and we'll take this turn, that is the last question. My friend, by the way, he used to be in Germany, Rajesh Arya. I don't know if any one of you know him, and I used to attribute this theory to him. This is going back like a 2010, 2012 time period. He He just put forward a concept. I gave it a name. I called it a theory of a canon, the canonical literature that we talk about, like in the Western thing. So for example, I'll give the example, just like I said Shivaji. Like if I say Durvasa, see, Durvasa is there in Mahabharata and Durvasa is there in Ramayana also. Okay, think of it. As soon as you hear the word Durvasa, the story of a Durvasa, what comes to your mind? Immediately you know something sensational is going to happen. He's going to curse somebody, right? Is it not? So here, this is an archetype. The Durvasa is a certain personalities. Those personalities exist in every time. At least those of us here who have a Marathi background, the Pula Deshpande's characters, like many things, Antu Barwa and Rao Sahib and Hari Tatya and, Chitale Master. These are like archetypes that you see time and time again. When you hear about teacher Chitale, immediately you think of your own teacher who was very similar to that. You think of Antu Barwa and then you remember your visit to Konkan and finding a person somewhat very similar to Antu Barwa. So these are the archetypes. These are, so when we are telling the story of a Durvasa in Mahabharata and Ramayana, the emphasis is not on the physical biography of that character. The emphasis is on the point, the Dharmartha Kama Mokshanam Upadesha Samanvitam. Again, something is going to happen, and this dangerous things always happens. Some guy in the position of power will come and sort of smolder you, and how are you going to manage it? Whether how Draupadi managed it and how Sita managed it and how somebody else managed it. So the emphasis is on that. So that Durvasa is used as a character for a very reason, that as soon as you say Durvas, people exactly know what's going to happen. So you don't have to tell a lot of information. So therefore we have to understand Purva Vruttam Katha Yuktam. It is based on a historical event, but it is told in an embellished form, as a katha. Just like a case study in a law school, or case study in a business school, or case study in a medical thing. To teach something, you take a real story, a real acquisitions or real merger and acquisitions of real companies, but you camouflage the names and you may add some additional artificial complexity to teach a point. So that can happen. That can happen, and that has happened, by the way, in our historical text and Purana text and so on. Hope that answers. Thank you. Mrunalini, you can conclude.
Thank you, Nilesh.
Nilesh,
We have spent a
can I-
lot of time.
Sorry to interrupt. Can I just info you one thing? Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, please.
Just you and always mention about Surya Siddhanta. Just to give an info, though I heard in so many podcasts that it is very old, but in Wikipedia, if you see, because I was trying to search the book, and it says just 400 CE or some
Correct.
use. So that is a
Yeah.
wrong info. Has to be corrected. I mean, world should know the real
Yeah,
info.
but don't bother correcting it, okay? I mean, or do bother correcting, and you will know how Wikipedia works, okay? Just simply said Wikipedia for practical things like what is the gravitational constant and what is the capital of India, it's all fine. For many things, it's useful. When it comes to Indian civilization, Indian history, Indian knowledge systems, Wikipedia becomes Wikipedia, okay? Let's close on that note.
Okay.
You're right, by the way, what you said. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And is it possible to share your email ID if possible?
Yes, I will give the email ID for everyone. But see, just keep in mind, WhatsApp, email ID, I do not give personal answers because I do not have a bandwidth. In spite of that, I say this in every lecture, but I still get, believe it or not, I get close to 200 plus emails every day. I have few volunteers who actually look at it, delete it, and move on, unless it's like an important one. So the best way is like a program like this, and the best way is through my books, through my lectures, through my podcast. So I'm doing many podcasts to the best of my ability. I'm giving many lectures. I gave 300 in India in the last 2 years, and most of them are recorded, but not all. So that's the way. So you can get my email. I'll say what it is if you need to reach for a specific thing. It's office of Nilesh Oak at gmail.com. And you have to be very, I mean, whoever wants to use it, who has to be very crisp, to the point, and like this. And, unless you get through that barrier, I'm not going to even see that email, unless it is something very critical. Simply manually, it's just not possible. I mean, the amount of email or things I get and the amount of programs I'm doing and the travel and the writing and so on. So these were the programs like these are the mediums. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, Nilesh, for your time. Heartfelt thanks from all of us and answering every question very in detail. And we look forward to having you sometime later whenever time permits,
Definitely.
whenever there is
Yes.
a demand again. Thank you. I
Definitely.
would send the recording of this as soon as I have uploaded it on our YouTube channel.
Very good.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you, everyone.
Thank you all.
so much.
Thank you.
And thank you, Mrunalini ji.
Thank you so
Thank you.
much.
Thank
Thanks
you.
a lot.
Thank you.
Bye.
Dhanyawad.
Bye-bye.